This is our community's house. We are all here to support our community. Thank you everybody for coming out here today. My name is Mike Little, the Mayor of the District of North Vancouver. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of Council for our Monday, October 16th at 7 o'clock. Council, just before we get going, I've asked if Councillor Forbes is available to start the meeting off on the right foot with a land acknowledgement. Councillor Forbes. Get your microphone on. There we go.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. I'd like to alter it slightly. We normally have public input right off the top. I think it would be appropriate to have our delegation come in before public input tonight. And so with that, I'll move the agenda as amended. Is there, I'll move that new agenda. Is there seconded by Councillor Back? Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. And go straight from there. We do have one set of meeting minutes or two sets of meeting minutes to consider, Council. So the meeting minutes for the September 11th regular meeting of Council and the September 26th public hearing have been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from those meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, will someone please move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Forbes, second by Councillor Ma. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Just before we invite our delegation, I did just want to describe the difference between a delegation and regular public input. This is an opportunity for community organizations to present to Council for up to 5 minutes and an opportunity for Q&A afterwards. We do like to create an opportunity to meet with the local Legion group, and that's what we're going to have today. This is officially the start of the Poppy campaign. And so at this point, I'll call all rise. If everybody please stand up and we will receive the delegation. Please be seated. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys all again. I know you all, so very nice to see you. So I'm just going to go through my formal thing for tonight. So good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff, and all the district residents that are here tonight. It's great show up. My name is Linda Findlay, and I am the president of Branch 114 of the Royal Canadian Legion Inland Valley. With me tonight are members of our executive, our first vice president and our Poppy chair, Joe Phillips, our second vice president, Aaron Robinson, who is serving in our color party tonight at the end there, Jim Phillipson, our treasurer, and our service officer, Keith Willett, is also with us in the back of the room, and as well as some members. And also the members of the Vancouver Color Party. So it is our honor and pleasure to present Mayor and Council with the first Poppy of 2023. The Poppy has been a symbol of remembrance since 1919 to honor all Canadians who have served in areas of conflict around the world and to perpetuate their sacred memory, and by providing for their veterans and their families in their time of need. In Canada, by an act of Parliament passed on June 30th in 1948, the Royal Canadian Legion became the official and lawful guardian of the Poppy and Remembrance in Canada. From the last Friday in October to Remembrance Day on November 11th of each year, millions of Canadians wear a Poppy as a visual pledge to never forget those who sacrificed for our freedom. The Royal Canadian Legion invites everyone across the country to show their recognition by proudly wearing this symbol of remembrance and taking a moment to reflect. The Poppy campaign is very much a local initiative conducted by local Legion branches throughout Canada. Donations collected during the Poppy campaign are held in trust at the local branch level to directly support veterans and their families within our communities. Organizing and implementing a Poppy campaign is an immense undertaking. From coordinating volunteers to man over 1,000 hours at local and high-profile tagging stations, the distribution and management of Poppy boxes to over 200 stores in the District of North Vancouver, as well as all the district elementary and high schools, the ordering and distribution of over 200 wreaths and ribbons, and the collection and counting of all the funds received. It's all hands on deck. We are truly fortunate to have Joe Phillips, our first Vice President and Poppy Chair, to spearhead this effort. We also count on our branch members, North Shore, Air, Army, and Navy cadets, local Cub Scouts and Girl Guide groups, and Lynn Valley and high school sports teams who are volunteering countless hours for tagging. And that's what we call when we're standing there with our boxes, giving out our Poppy, it's called tagging. So Joe's efforts to develop additional ways for us to provide poppies is truly inspiring and innovative. By partnering with our pals at the North Shore Salvation Army, we borrow their Christmas kettles, and we now have more efficient way to tag at our high-profile tagging locations, including tap and pay terminals now. And we're also increasing business community support throughout the North Shore. Once again, our goal for Poppy Trust Fund this year is to raise $100,000. We encourage all of North Van District residents to engage with our Poppy Tagger volunteers when you see them. Say hello and buy a Poppy. Over the past 20 years, the Lynn Valley Legion alone has redistributed over $1.9 million from our Poppy Trust Fund. We are extremely proud of this accomplishment, and we like to refer to ourselves as the little Legion that could and can. The Lynn Valley Legion will be hosting a small, intimate, and local Remembrance Day ceremony outside our branch on Lynn Valley Road beginning at 10:45 on November 11th. We're inviting all veterans, families, seniors, and youth in the Lynn Valley area and giving them an opportunity to lay wreaths to remember those who gave their lives in service of our country. You are all welcome to stop by and say hello. So we are proud to present First Poppy to Mayor and Council tonight. We will now provide you with your Poppy and package, which this year includes an inclusion and equity pin. The diversity tree that is represented reflects the joining of all Legion members through common values. Offering a welcoming environment for all members, guests, and neighbors from all backgrounds strengthens and supports us all. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Thank you.
Much.
So we're now going to pass around, please. Do you want to come out, Mike, and do you?
Yes, let's do that. Thank you all so much.
Call the colors out, please.
I will. Okay. So first, I need to ask Council for a motion to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Hanson. Call the question on that. All those in favor, contrary minded, carried. At this point, on behalf of the council and the community, I want to thank you very much for the service that you perform for serving our veterans and keeping memory of their sacrifices alive within our community. I know that when you do the tagging program, my son's in Air Cadets, and they're super excited to come and do the tagging on behalf of your organization. And so looking forward to that program starting up again. But at this point, I'll ask everybody to rise for the recessional. Right? Hey, come on. you very much. All right. The next part of our evening's meeting is the public input period. We reserve a period of up to half an hour at the front end of each meeting to hear issues of concern from residents within our community. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to share their views on matters important to them. The clerk's department has been receiving some names ahead of time, and I have about 5, and so we will have time for additional if people would like to put their hand up at that time. Like I say, we try to reserve a period of up to a half an hour. But the first speaker that I have is Vince Soras joining us virtually, followed by Robert Parker. I guess I should say that these meetings are being held in a hybrid fashion. That means that all members of council, the public, and staff can participate either in person or virtually. And so the first speaker tonight will be joining us virtually. And so I see Vince Soras has joined the meeting on the panel. You are muted. Can you hear me? There we go.
Yes, thank you. And
Welcome.
hello,
You
everyone.
have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Vince Sorachi. I've lived in Edgeworth Village in the community here for over 10 years now. I have 2 young children attending school in the area. And Edgeworth is a very special community. It has an exceptional family vibe and so much to offer. And as a result of that, a sought after location for families to move and live, as we did. We moved from downtown to raise our children and bring them to school here on the North Shore in this area. I would say the only negative with respect to this area is mostly the cost of housing. Where new homes are all in the $4 to $5 million range, and the need for more options to either help mitigate those price points or offer an alternative to owning a large house or a plot of land. Edgeworth lacks that multifamily residential dwellings to address this. And I guess, as we all know, with the property market in kind of general or already on the supply side constrained, I believe we should be welcoming projects and developers with plans like this, not only in the village, but everywhere else, to help Canadians with alternative and more affordable choices. So my comment here is I am therefore strongly in support of this project. I believe the location is ideal with immediate transit access, amenities, restaurants, grocery stores, drugstores, all within walking distance. I would also encourage more projects like this that can help facilitate supply and affordability through multifamily residential dwellings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments, Vincent Sorachi. Next speaker is Robert Parker, followed by Hani Zabani. And Robert Parker is joining us here in person. Welcome.
Thank you.
When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
I'm Robert Parker. I live at 3184 Brookridge Drive, right behind the proposed development and by the United Church, parallel to Edgemont Boulevard. I've lived on the North Shore my whole life, in many areas of the North Shore. I've been here for the last 20 years. My kids have gone through Handsworth and Cleveland, and my wife and I have helped develop the kids club at Cleveland and many donated hours. We live in a precarious place where there's a circular turnaround behind the United Church. Edgemont is a dead end with the church and the amount of cars that go to the church. Over 300 people can be placed at the church. 150 cars can be put onto Brookridge. With all the developments in the area, the Connaught, the Buffo properties, the Edgemont villas. We've been surrounded by building for about 10 or 15 years now. We now have really bad parking problems and walking problems on Brookridge. Brookridge is a rounded street with a sharp angle off of Edgemont, and the proposed property wants 24-car underground parking coming out onto a bowed road with limited visibility, which is a walking street for the community of Paisley, Brookridge. The whole area cuts through Brookridge. They don't go around the main street of Ridgewood and Edgemont. They cut through Brookridge. Parking on both sides, pedestrians, walking, kids, family, everyone's going for ice cream. Everyone's late for their appointments at the church. They all park erratically. They park crossing streets. They bullet down there fast. It's actually very dangerous. And now you're wanting a development to put underground parking onto an already extremely busy street, a quiet family street at times, but for the most part, 300 people visiting the church per week, and overcrowding our parking, dangerous walking area. I've even caught a fire truck not being able to turn around behind the United Church because of illegal parking in the area. We've got now, because of all the development in the area, we have local people parking there, going to the village. We have employees parking there, now going to the village, going to the restaurants and the Super Saves and the Thrifties and the Starbucks and whatever. We have overnight parking for car and ride during the day. People go away for the weekends. People go downtown for the day. They park and ride there. The parking is crazy. The street is extremely narrow. It's very dangerous. And I don't think the council has really looked at it in regards to the safety. The stoplights, there's a bridge there. We angle off really sharply, and a lot of people turn on there quickly, and bang, there's people putting another 24 cars. And lack of parking. Both old condos that was just built right beside the development now, all their guest parking is on Brookridge.
I need you to draw to a close, please. We're over
Okay.
3 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Hanny Zebaneh, followed by Richard Whitstock.
Hi, this is Hanny here.
Welcome. I can hear you clearly. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to all of you for all of the hard work that you guys do. I just would like to say from the top that I'm in support of the project at 3288 Brookridge. As Vince Sirachi mentioned in the beginning, the North Shore, especially North Vancouver, is a extremely attractive place for families. I moved here. I grew up in West Vancouver, then moved away for a bit, and then I moved back to North Vancouver. We live in Canyon Heights. I have 3 little kids. And over the last few years, I've seen a number of young families move into my neighborhood. And it's great. In the mornings, there's like 10 kids. I'm walking with 10 kids to go to the school, to the local school here. And I think being Edgemont and being this area, Canyon Heights, et cetera, in North Vancouver, I think it is extremely attractive for young families. And I think that's the kind of people we want to attract to this neighborhood, is our young families. The schools are great here. And as Vince said earlier, Edgemont is a special place and it does need a little bit more density. My understanding is this project is not a huge one. I think it's a nice size project for the community, and I think it would be really, really valuable to the community to add this and to be able to attract young families, as I said in the beginning. Yeah, that's it. So I'd like to say that I'm in support of the project, and again, thank you for all of you, what you do.
Thank you very much for your comments, Hanny Zebaneh. The next speaker I have is Richard Whitstock, followed by Alexis Coyne. Richard is joining us here in person. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, city staff. My name is Richard Whitstock. I'm a principal of Domus Homes. We are the proponent of the project at 3288 Brookridge. I'm just here to introduce myself. I've got my team here, the architect Arthur Buse and my partner Yasser Yassin, who is a resident of the neighborhood and has a particular interest in this project. Just wanted to highlight a couple key benefits of our very modest, low density 12 home townhome proposal. As a couple of the callers have mentioned, we feel it's important to introduce a bit of diversity with housing oriented towards young families, empty nesters, downsizers, into the Brookridge, Ridgewood neighborhood. The project is 12 homes over underground parking, very low density, 0.8 FSR. Every home has an underground garage of two parking stalls with it. So there shouldn't be, I heard the concern, and we've heard through our engagement, the concern about parking and traffic in the neighborhood. I think our underground parkade should mitigate that the way we've designed it. There's an elevator from the underground parkade, and we've designed the homes in blocks of 2 and 3 unit buildings to keep the density down, break down the massing, transition down to the single family in behind, and provide for elevators in the suites so that they would be accessible for downsizers and empty nesters from the community. We are proposing to improve the corner of Brookridge and Ridgewood by dedicating some land on the corner to square up that intersection, improve sight lines, landscape it, grade it, so that some of the concerns about making left turns or right turns at that intersection are dealt with. We've had our traffic engineers and work with the city staff to design those improvements. We've got a commitment of $200,000 in additional off-site works that can be used to improve the area around down Brookridge, around the traffic circle in behind the church that has been referenced numerous times by the neighbors through our public engagement. You know, those are issues that don't really have a lot to do with our development, but we're trying to make the community a better place through the project. So we've committed to that. And just the improvement to the bus stop that we've added on Ridgewood with the transit shelter and pullout. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight. Thank you. And we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your comments, Richard Whitstock.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker I have is Alexis Chacoin on agenda items, and then I do actually have 2 speakers on non-agenda items, sorry, 3 speakers on non-agenda items after that. So Alexis Chacoin, followed by Jane Bradwell. Alexis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I can hear you. Welcome. You have 3
Perfect.
minutes to address the council.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Alexis Chacoin. I have lived on the North Shore for over 20 years. Most of that in the city of North Van, and the last 3 in West Vancouver. I sit on 2 District of North Van council appointed committees, the Advisory Committee on the Disability Issues, which of that I'm a chair, and an advisory design panel. I'm here tonight to speak on my own experience, though, through the summer, collaborating with the District of North Van's consulting firm hired to develop their accessibility plan, which is based on new provincial legislation called the Accessible British Columbia Act. No question, I had hesitation to begin with, worried that the plan had basically already been written and they were just basically looking for a rubber stamp. I can happily report that this was not the case. We met with the firm multiple times on top of their own meetings with district staff far and wide. The firm's representatives had disclosed that they too have disabilities, which really legitimized the work for me and made it why that I could feel comfortable working with them. They listened, they edited on the spot, and they incorporated a whole lot to encompass what people with disabilities need to participate in this community. Why are we doing this? So many feel that keeping a lens of accessibility in mind moving forward with all projects isn't worth the effort if it's only benefiting a few. Well, here are a few stats that can hopefully help clear up that perspective. 1 in 5, that's 22% of Canadian population aged 15 and over, have 1 or more disabilities. In BC, more than 900,000 people report it. That's actually 25% of our population. So diversity in reality is reality, but inclusion is truly a choice. Of all barriers that can limit inclusive participation, which can be ramps, bad acoustics, no braille on signage, the biggest though is attitudinal. Our perceptions and attitude lay the foundation of our actions. When we think differently, we act differently. And the biggest need that came out loud and clear to me through the development of the plan actually came from the municipal staff themselves. It was a call for education. People are aware that seeing difference in the absence of knowledge or experience creates fear and uncertainty, so you hold back. So hosting, moving forward, sessions of disability awareness for all staff at all levels can provide this information and the experience to help dispel some fears and possibly correct some myths. We are not immune to injury or aging. For better or worse, we can bring on, aging brings on aches and pains, knee replacements, sometimes more. And disability truly is an overall experience of the human experience. Ensuring that our community is built for all ages and all body abilities throughout one's lifespan only makes sense. Is the plan perfect? It's a work in progress. It's a very strong beginning, though, in a process of legislation that is new to all of us. I hope you approve your accessibility plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexis Chacoin, for your comments here today, and thank you for your service to the community through the Advisory Committee Disabilities Issues as Chair and the Advisory Design Panel. So thank you very much for your comments today. The next speaker that I have is Jane Bradwell, followed by Rob Webb. I believe Jane is joining us here in person. Welcome.
We are a team, so I'm gonna let
There you go.
Red Rock go first.
Hello all. Nice to see you again. Good evening. The restructuring of Canadian mayors and municipalities under the auspices of the United Nations began in 1992. Prime Minister Brian Mulroney signed Canada onto a UN Agenda 21. Canada thus became a UN member nation state. 178 countries signed on, lured by the promise of big money to go green. By 2000, countries, including Canada, were being governed by directives of the UN, G7, G20, World Economic Forum, and World Health Organization, among others. Every organization named is a foreign-based NGO, a non-governmental organization, and every member of all these organizations is unelected. Parliamentary procedures for law changes weren't followed. In 1994, a municipal primer was issued to all local towns outlining how they were to restructure their governments. Though the municipal primer was a non-binding agreement, all towns adopted it. Our public officials, the mayors and councillors of that day, were partnered with the private corporation, the Corporation of the District of North Vancouver, a public-private partnership, which then appointed a chief administrative officer who helped implement the global agenda instead of a local one. The International Council on Local and Environmental Issues, ICLEI, became the main source of consultation to push and fund the global agenda. We remind you that the World Economic Forum and United Nations signed a strategic partnership framework in 2019 to jointly accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This is the same World Economic Forum whose chairman, Klaus Schwab, famously declared, "You will own nothing and be happy." This is the same Klaus Schwab who, referring to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, boasted, "They have penetrated more than half of the cabinet." We would ask Mayor Little and councillors, why should the citizens of District of the North Vancouver bow down to the intrusive dictates of an unelected foreign entity? The fact is, we should not and we will not. What you ask, does any of this have to do with 15-minute smart cities or healthy cities? Absolutely everything. SMART, S for surveillance, M for monitoring, A for analysis, R for reporting, and T for technology. Technology news editor Patrick Wood, with 50 years of experience and expertise on technocracy, wrote, "The 15-minute city, or as it is called here, the healthy city, is a cover for the data collection bonanza for technocrats who design and operate them. Cities designed for maximum efficiency always reveal the technocratic thinking that efficiency itself is the goal. Maximum surveillance allows for maximum control to achieve even more efficiency. At its very root, this mechanistic thinking is anti-human. The healthy city narrative seeks to fool you under the guise of saving the planet, keeping you safe and delivering convenience. North Van has partnered with a national company called Urban Strategies at taxpayers' expense to assist
I'm gonna have to
implementation
ask
with
you to
this
draw to a
UN
close.
initiative. I'm sure you've heard of them. Urban Strategies.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your comments, Rob Webb. Next speaker is Jane Bradwell.
Welcome.
Good evening. The Healthy City Plan is actually a gateway to digital IDs and central bank digital currencies. CBDCs allow banks and your government to freeze bank accounts if you peacefully and lawfully protest or express your disagreement with government policy. Remember the truck convoy in Ottawa in February of 22, when our government invoked the Emergencies Act and froze the private bank accounts of law-abiding citizens? Well, healthy cities are wolves in sheep's clothing. Don't believe the countless stories spewing forth from the elitist captured mainstream media, all claiming to have our best interests at heart. We've been burned too many times. In reality, 24/7 surveillance through the Internet of Things inside your home, 5G, LED lights, and facial recognition cameras outside track and trace everything about our private lives. Further, the implementation of exclusion zones and geofencing will be used to restrict movement and travel. Ability to control behaviors through military-directed energy technologies. Property and car ownership can be outlawed. Evictions from farms and rural areas can be implemented in order to gather people into cities. Digital passports being promulgated by the UN, World Economic Forum, and the World Health Organization are being planned and implemented. They are tied to social credit score, which is determined by compliance to government directives. These passports control all access and all aspects of life. Digital currency is being implemented to end cash and monitor all spending. It can be turned off and on depending on your compliance score. And universal basic income is a state-controlled allowance, forcing compliance by restricting access to food, money, and services. All of the above will enable climate lockdowns to be implemented easily, arbitrarily, and indefinitely. The real agenda of these healthy cities is to monitor and control everyone and everything. We, the citizens of North Vancouver, wish to enter a meaningful, respectful dialogue with our elected members of council on these complex and key issues. A key framework of that dialogue is a list of questions posed to council. For instance, can council explicitly guarantee that citizens will remain free to travel, as is the right under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? Can council guarantee not to restrict access to essential services, medical care, bank accounts, government pensions, utilities? Mostly, we, the citizens of North Vancouver, need to have the conversation with council about exiting their non-binding agreement with the private for-profit entity known as the Corporation of the District of North Vancouver. We need to go back to simpler time, when open, transparent municipal government serves its citizens and works in their best interests. We are your equal partners on this journey, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Jane Bradwell. Folks, in order to maintain a fair and unbiased opportunity for people to present differences of opinion, we ask that you please withhold applause or jeers or other things. But thank you very much for your comments here today, Jane Bradwell. The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert, joining us virtually.
I think you can hear me now because I have unmuted.
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great. So council, in order that I can actually meet the 3-minute deadline, I would like you to do 2 things. All of you have access to the internet. And so I would like you to please go to GeoWeb and open GeoWeb and go to the wastewater treatment plant. And you can find it's very, very easily to find. It's at the base of Pemberton Avenue. And at the same time, I would also ask you to use your browser in another window to open the District of North Vancouver's comprehensive bylaws and go to bylaw CD 55. Now I'm talking right now. It's very difficult for me to see exactly how much time I have left, despite the fact that I'm using 2 different computers and a monitor. But I think I have 2 minutes left, and I will ask Mike Little, the mayor, once I'm down to 15 seconds, just tell me you're done. Okay?
I will do that. Thank you. Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Yeah. So what I want to say is, you've now had enough time to look down You have enough time to look at the site for the wastewater treatment plant at the base of Pemberton. And you have on the right-hand side of your screen the ability to open up the zoning for that plant. That plant is zoned as CD 55 comprehensive development. CD 55 comprehensive development. I would now ask you please to go to CD 55 comprehensive development on the page that you've opened, which is the District of North Vancouver's bylaws. And I would like to, and Mr. Milburn is here, and I want to say these are the allowable businesses allowed in CD 55. Office, retail sales, conference, display, sales and reception areas, interior storage, exterior storage, outdoor customer service, restaurant servicing, caretaker. And now I'm going to ask, how is it possible that we are building a wastewater treatment plant in zoning CD 55? Because we're not allowed to. I'm down to 22 seconds, so I'm going to close now by saying there's a serious problem here. And I've asked the RCMP to look into this. And now I will ask Mr. Milburn, can you please explain why a wastewater treatment plant is being built in CD 55? Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you for your comments, Hazen Colbert. We do have a little bit more time. I think someone in the second row had indicated an interest to speak to the clerk before the meeting. Yes, go ahead, if you want to come up.
Thanks very much. Hey, I'm Tristan Newby. I'm speaking on behalf of related to the construction on Bendale Place and the Parkway. So the District of North Vancouver staff have made the choice to permit construction to operate throughout the night on my street. Based on correspondence with council members, staff, and the contractor, this decision was made without consultation to those it immediately impacts. I am extremely dissatisfied with the lack of empathy that the engineers of my district have displayed. I received dismissive, sorry for your inconvenience statements, and most recently from section manager, who, to summarize, asserts the decision is at our sole discretion and the affected residents need to deal with it. Some mitigation strategies have occurred, and I'm glad to say that grinding is no longer happening at midnight, and the floodlights aren't directed into my bedroom. This does not change the fact that there is an excavator digging, driving, beeping, and dropping its load at the end of my driveway the entire night. And this is not good enough. My kids, partner, and I have not slept the night for an entire week, and it's having a negative effect on our work, our school, and our health. As a nurse employed in a local emergency department, when I can't sleep, there are real world and no exaggeration, life or death consequences. DNV Noise Regulation Bylaw, Section 8, exemption for construction noise, requires that issuing an exemption would not impose an undue inconvenience or disruption to members of the public. I am directly impacted and a member of the public. I was not consulted, nor was I provided sufficient advance notification. I'm stating to you loud and clear, as I have in writing, that this work imposes undue inconvenience and disruption. The District of North Vancouver has failed to meet the requirements of its own bylaws to provide an exemption. Section 11 of the Noise Regulation Bylaw outlines that those in violation are subject to a fine of $1,000 to $50,000 for every instance that occurs over each day that it occurs, plus the cost of prosecution, which, given that the district is in violation of its own bylaw and the continuous work, this represents a potentially significant ongoing liability. The district staff has to date made it clear that they are unwilling to adjust the timing of the work. The preference of my family is that the work be rescheduled to the day. In the absence of this, I'm here seeking an accommodation down the street at the Holiday Inn for the remaining nights of the construction and a per diem to offset any inconvenience. This is an accommodation that would not incur a great cost to the district, certainly less than $1,000 to $50,000 per day. It is also less costly than what a private company would offer for the same inconvenience. I look forward to an elected representative's reply following this meeting or tomorrow. Thank you.
May I just ask, and you've noted it in your comments that the notice ahead of time was insufficient. It was only the day before, correct?
It was provided Friday evening and work to start on Monday.
That's unsatisfactory.
It is. Thank you.
Okay, and the next speaker, I saw a virtual hand pop up. I don't know, they dropped back down, but I believe there was a virtual speaker, Hamid. Did they, are they still on the meeting? I don't see them on the meeting anymore, so I do have time for one more speaker. Would somebody else like to address council? Welcome. If you could start with your name, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Maureen Parker, and I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but there was a couple things that were missed about the Brookridge development that I really think need to be heard. One is lack of appropriate public notification. No one that we've spoken to at Brookridge got any notification. It was just through word of mouth. Someone happened to tell us, by the way, that development that was proposed in 2016 is back again. So obviously in 2016, there were a lot of people that were opposed to it. And I think that there will still be a lot of people opposed to it. And I know a lot of people expressed interest in wanting to come tonight, but because it was last minute for them, couldn't. The second thing is, even though people noted that it is a small 12-unit development, that small 12-unit development comes on the heels of 4 large developments immediately surrounding us. And that's within like 10 years max. So we've had a lot of development. We've had a lot of more traffic, more people in this area, more construction going on. So it's not the 12, just the 12 units, it's the 12 units plus the other 4 big developments that came right before it. The other thing I wanted to say is that safety is the most critical issue with this development. That access to the underground parking is at the mouth of Brookridge and Ridgewood. Ridgewood is a busy street that goes into Edgemont. Ridgewood is a busy street. Brookridge is actually a busier street than most people would think at peak hours, because the multi-purpose United Church has a lot of different activities going on throughout the day. And so there's times when people are using that church that there's a steady stream of traffic coming in. And when you are going to get them to stop right at the mouth when cars are coming into Brookridge, or and are going to bottleneck right out into Ridgewood, it's a dangerous situation. And as it was mentioned before, a lot of people use the street as a walkway. And it's definitely a major safety hazard to have an access to the condo at that point. There was one more point I wanted to make. As I said, I wasn't planning to do this, but my brief notes, oh yeah, that in 2016, this was already shelved. So obviously there is interest, and I'm not sure why it came back without notice. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. And we are, we'll go into item 8.1 almost immediately, but I did just want to mention that if it passes by the council tonight, then it would be referred to a public hearing that we're proposing for November 28th. So there still will be a lot of time for the public to provide input, and that provides the best opportunity, albeit the last opportunity for public input on that particular project. And then the council will consider the matter at a later date for second and third reading at that point. So that's the key decision date for that is public hearing, public input up to the 28th. If the council gives it first reading tonight, and then beyond that would be the matter would return back for a council decision at a later date than that. So there is still a lot of time for consideration on that. Okay, we've completed the public input period, and so now we're going to go on to the regular agenda. And so the first item up for discussion in the regular agenda is item 8.1, which is bylaws 8555 and 8554, OCP amendment and rezoning for a 12-unit townhouse development project at 3288 Brookridge Drive and 1135 to 1147 Ridgewood Drive. At this time, I'm going to call on staff to make some initial comments. I'll go to Yan Zhang, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm going to give a very brief overview of this application. Dumas Homes has applied to develop 3 existing single-family zone properties to a 12-unit townhouse development. The site is located at the corner of Brookridge and Ridgewood Drive, shown in red, in the residential peripheral area of Adjournment Village. To the west, north, south of the site are single-family properties. And to the east is the larger scale townhouse development with 24 units that was completed and occupied in 2019. The proposal is consistent with OCP and the Adjournment Village Plan. Both of this council approved policy envision a low density townhouse development at this site with a density of 0.8 FSR. So the proposal has a density of a 0.8 FSR, 12 townhouse units located in 5 buildings. Each building either contain 2 units or 3 units, ranging in size from 1,800 square feet to 2,000 square feet, and all 3-bedroom units, offering alternative housing form for families or those downsizing. 3 stories in height along Ridgewood and 2-story in height on the south side to provide a transition further south. The 2-unit building massing in particular is not dissimilar to some large single-family homes in the area. As this is the occasion of introduction of the bylaws, I thought it's germane to touch upon the process this application has gone through to come before you tonight. The original application was made in 2017. A public consultation as well as advisory committee review completed in 2018. At that time, there were multiple projects under review or proceeding in the village center, and concerns were expressed regarding construction fatigue in the area. This project was advised not to proceed at that time. In the intervening years, considerable conversations have been going on about key issues, namely access to the site and offsite improvement works. In January 2023 this year, the applicant sent a letter to residents in the area notifying them of the project status and offering contact information for further discussion. And then in July this year, 2023, once the design work was completed to the satisfaction of staff have sent another neighbor notification letter providing an update on the application and then the revised final design. No comments were received as a result of this round of notification. Just to summarize, with this proposal, the access to the project will be from Brookridge Drive, providing 2 parking spaces for each unit in 1 level of underground parking. The project will be required to construct a bike lane along Ridgewood, as well as transit stop and bus shelter directly in front of the development, as directed by the district transportation plan. Other offsite improvement include sidewalk along both sides of Ridgewood Drive, as well as east side of Brookridge, for the length of the site frontage, a new crosswalk across Brookridge Drive connecting pedestrians to the village center, as well as a boulevard improvements such as the street lighting and planting with estimated value of $1.3 million. In addition, the proposal is offering a community amenity contribution, CAC, of approximately $333,000, which can be used for affordable housing fund, park control improvements, public art, or other infrastructure improvement in the community. And lastly, the applicant is also contributing an additional $200,000 for active transportation improvement in and around the site. Mayor and council, staff have reviewed the proposal against council policies and found the proposal supportable. There would be a net 8 additional units as a result of this proposal, discounting the existing 4 units. So that's 3 homes with 1 additional secondary suites. This fitting well into a gentle densification approach into the existing neighborhood. The 2 bylaws are recommended for first reading and referral to public hearing so that council can hear directly from the public. We are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back, I see your hand up. Will you be making a motion?
Yes, Your Worship, I'll be moving the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that? Seconded by Councillor Pope. Okay, Councillor Back, your comments?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So this project has been highlighted by staff here tonight and of course in the report, noting that the first detailed application was received back in December 2017 to redevelop 3 existing single-family lots in Edgemont Village into 12 3-bedroom townhouse units spread over 5 buildings with an FSR of 0.8. I'll note that this project does comply with the Edgemont plan, which was confirmed in 2014, which contemplates ground-oriented multifamily housing as a transition between the village center and the surrounding single-family properties around Edgemont Village. I will also note, as was noted by Ms. Yang, that the CAC contribution will be $330,000 approximately, and $200,000 in improvements to pedestrian and active transportation, which I think will be a real benefit to the area and to hopefully alleviate some of the issues that clearly exist along Brookridge Drive. So I'm hoping that that will actually result in some improvements for the current situation there. Under the current zoning, we could see a total of 6 housing units built without any rezoning, so 3 single-family homes, each with suites. And I feel that the addition of 12 townhomes would be a much greater benefit to the community, to people who are looking to downsize, to families, to really provide more housing diversity around the village, which I think is certainly needed and will be a great benefit. So recognizing that this is just first reading tonight, we will still have a public hearing and the opportunity to hear formally from the community. I'm happy to support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Hanson is the seconder. Do you have further, or sorry, Councillor Pope is the seconder. Do you have further comments?
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you very much for the presentation. I note that that this project aligns with the OCP and the Edgemont plan in providing housing for the missing middle families or seniors aging in place within a village center. It meets our provincial housing targets goal of 629 3-bedroom units over the next 5 years. It meets the OCP action plan to deliver low carbon, compact, and diverse housing. It's located on a transit corridor. The applicant is offering $200,000 to improve offsite areas, sidewalks, and street lights. In my opinion, I think it's actually going to improve safety in the neighborhood and even more money to active transportation, which is also good. I am cognizant of the fatigue of construction in the Edgemont area. I live very close to there myself, but I do feel like the bulk of it is through and has moved forward now. The other projects are, the one around the corner is, wrapping up, and that what we have in Edgemont now is a much more dynamic and thriving environment than it used to be. And so I am generally supportive of the project, and I'd really like to hear more from the public at the upcoming hearing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to staff for the work done in bringing the matter to this point. Thank you to both my council colleagues for their comments. I will be voting in favor of this proposal going to a public hearing. As discussed, this calls for 12 townhouses being placed over 5 buildings in an area that currently has 3 single-family lots. I do so, however, with a a lack of enthusiasm. In the past, I have repeatedly voted against proposals for expensive market housing. Almost invariably, that has been my position. And I don't believe that this proposal will do anything for affordability. These are going to be extremely expensive units. I would have so much preferred to see rental housing on such a site. I would have so much preferred to see affordable rental housing in such a site. I don't understand, even after all these years of sitting in this chair, why it's not possible to assemble partnerships with senior levels of government to use sites like this in a way which will have greater social utility to our community, create the type of housing that we actually need. I mean, I can easily imagine the site being purchased by some level of government used as a co-op, providing housing at an affordability level, which is desperately missing from our community. However, here we are. I have not, to date, we haven't seen those types of initiatives gain any traction for these types of proposals. At minimum, this will create 12 units where there are currently 3 older homes. I agree with the comment that the construction fatigue in the area is abating. We will receive $200,000 towards active transportation, $335,000 towards CACs, which hopefully can be directed towards affordable housing and provide some utility there, usefulness there. We will get $174,000 in DCC's development cost charges. And perhaps this is indeed the best that can be achieved as a practical matter for sites such as this at this time. So with those comments, I will be voting in favor of going to first reading, and I look forward to hearing the comments of the public in a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. At one time, we had one of the most rigorous consultation processes in the region. The development community criticized us on a regular basis because we asked them to go out to the local community and talk with our residents more than any other municipality in Metro Vancouver. We were the bad guys because we actually wanted to hear what our residents thought. And we evolved that consultation process over years. And tonight, I feel like that consultation process has gone to the wayside and that we now have one of the weakest consultation levels in the region. I don't like it when I hear residents coming out saying they can't sleep because we've made a decision to do work that is negatively impacting them. And they were given notice 2 days before that work started. We've had residents write us every night last week because they have diggers in their front yards, diggers that I actually witnessed myself at 10:30 at night, even though our staff said they were working from 7 till 9. So Mr. Stewart and Mayor Little, we need to fix this tomorrow morning, fix it. I'm also concerned that all of these years with these projects that all of our communities have been faced with, and we look at this one tonight, but the last time this development went out to the local community was 5 years ago in 2018 to a public meeting. And I will tell you that we've had letters all week, none of which were reflected in the comments by staff in regards to this application, but letters from residents of Brookridge stating that they did not get notification of this development, and again, heard through word of mouth, and came out and wrote letters because they have a concern about this process. And the village has changed. A lot of development has finished. The other day I was up there, Mayor Little, and almost witnessed a fender bender right outside of Zigzag because on a single lane, somebody was trying to pass on Edgemont Boulevard. So circulation has changed in the village, and we need to keep tabs on how that's impacting local residents. Speed, the district just implemented 30-kilometer speed signs because we've been getting so many complaints about the speed in which traffic is traveling through the village. So the residents of Brookridge have some very valuable and important points and perspectives that they have been unable to share with the developer, with staff prior to a public hearing. And as we all know, when we get to public hearings, as Mayor Little has just pointed out, it's kind of the last time that you get to consult. So now, and with all due respect, Mayor Little, you're expressing that the community has lots of time to look into this, but it's on them to look into it. Whereas before, what we would do, and we're doing it right now, actually, on Lillooet Road and Keith Road, we're going out and having public meetings on one rezoning where we don't even have an applicant. And we're asking the community, what do you think? And we don't even have an application yet. So I have to ask myself, what's wrong, Mr. Stewart? What is wrong, Mayor Little, in where we are in this place, where we came from a very consistent approach? We put our residents first. We put their concerns, and we didn't always agree with them, but we wanted to hear from them. We allowed them to go out to a town hall meeting or a public meeting where we could take part and ask questions, and that just doesn't exist anymore. So I have some problems with this process. I'll come back on my second time after I hear from other councillors and continue my comments and maybe offer a suggestion.
I'm assuming that was a rhetorical question for me, or do you want a response? No, I'm trying to be fair. If it was an honest question, or whether it's something that you want as a broader conversation, but I mean, very specifically, Lillooet and Keith are district-owned sites, and that's why they're quite a different process for approving those sites. And these sites are privately owned, and so they have a different process for them.
Well, consultation is consultation. I think we need a broader conversation about this in a workshop.
That's the material difference. Councillor Ma, your comments?
Thank you. If I can just start off through your worship, just to ask a question. A lot's been made of the value of the CACs, DCCs. Just wanted to know, relative to other projects of this scale, is this amount good? Like, this, give me a sense. It just shows a number, but I have no sense whether it's high or low.
Your worship, it's a flat rate CAC, so it's following the policy of the District of North Vancouver. So it's consistent relative to other projects based on its scale.
The additional 200 for the active transportation, is that in addition?
The additional 200 will be in addition to what's normally required through district policy. So this was offered up in essence to try to address the concerns, some of which have been heard tonight. And we're certainly sympathetic to those concerns around the need for public safety, and staff have thoroughly looked at the comments received from the public to date. There have been public meetings in the past, and the intent behind the amendments to the design of the offsite works was specifically to respond to those concerns. And so it's staff's recommendation that those mitigation measures be brought forward to the public for their comment through the process recommended tonight.
Second question, I don't believe the tenant relocation policy would apply here, but are there any rental tenants affected by this?
Through your worship, I believe there's two units that are currently tenanted. One was aware of the development prior to moving in, and the other one has been offered some relocation compensation.
Okay.
But you're correct that the relocation policy does not apply.
Thank you. Just in terms of comments, I have considered comments received via email and presented tonight. And I have driven by the site a couple of times, and I attempted actually to talk to one of the owners there, but I think she was off trying to catch the bus, so we didn't have a long conversation. I appreciate the comments about traffic, especially in the immediate areas, but I do note that there was a couple of emails received today in support of the project from those neighbors. You know, when there's change, the status quo is bound to change as well. The proposed design in the 12 townhouses are consistent with the character of the Edgemont Village. These units which are 3-bedroom units, will add a diverse housing stock, and I believe will contribute in a positive way to the growing Edgemont community. I also note that another project is being developed a few blocks away, but along Ridgewood. I've spoken with staff, and if the two projects concurrently move forward, the district's construction traffic management team will work with the two applicants to coordinate the construction schedule. Overall, I think this project is positive and it fits the character of Edgemont Village. And I will support this application receiving first reading tonight and going to public hearing for more input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ma. Next speaker is second time, Councillor Murray.
So I guess the issue for the residents in the neighborhood is the traffic. And the traffic has grown exponentially since the projects in the last 10 years have been completed and in the last 5 years. So the circulation in the community is what's changed. And our engineering department has yet to do an assessment of that circulation. We asked for an assessment when we requested that we put 30-kilometer signs in the village. The problem with this process is that change has not been considered as part of this redesign on Brookridge. And even if they went to a public meeting now, which would be a benefit, there's no guarantee that the input that came out of that consultation would change the design in any way, because we are deciding whether or not we're going for first reading or not. So I don't know how the community is able to have any very valuable input to be able to change this in any way. And I'm wondering if staff can advise if the circulation was indeed an issue and council wanted to give direction to change how the access from the building onto Brookridge would be looked at differently, what would the options be?
Comment from staff on the matter?
Your worship, these are bylaw considerations. Council can provide direction to staff to bring back options to look at access configurations if the access is unsuitable from council's perspective. What you have before you tonight is staff's recommendation. Ultimately, it's council's direction to decide whether or not it's appropriate or whether or not options can be explored for other alternatives.
Motion on the floor is that we grant first reading and we go to public hearing. If you have a contrary motion or a referral motion and it gets the support of the room, sorry, not the contrary motion, but if you have a referral motion and it gets the support of the room, then the process would stop. It would be referred to a workshop where staff would give that kind of an input.
Well, Mr. Milburn.
Alternate motion that clearly directs with the collides with the motion that's actually on the floor, it would be referring the matter back to staff for further discussion.
Well, my question was, what are the options to deal with traffic circulation? And Mr. Milburn said we have bylaws that we brought forward and council can give us any other options. Well, Mr. Milburn, as the director of planning, maybe you could suggest some options to deal with traffic circulation and access onto Brookridge.
Do we have a transportation study plan for this? And do we have alternative access and egress possibilities for this site?
Yeah, through your worship, I'm happy to provide an answer. So this, the access issue is the subject of lengthy discussion with staff and then the local neighbors, the church, as well as the subject of a BUNT study. So that study really look at alternative access, as well as, taking into consideration the new development in the area, as well as the envisioned active transportation improvement along Ridgewood. And it was a pretty lengthy, and those kind of information we are more than happy to bring forward as part of presentation at public hearing. And staff from engineering will be available, as well as the applicant's consultant. And if at that point there is a alternative direction to staff still, we're happy to entertain that.
So just to be clear then, I don't want to wait until the public hearing. If this does pass tonight, I don't want to wait until the public hearing to receive the report. I want the public to be able to see that report ahead of time. I still think 5 weeks is enough time to come up with some proposal there. I guess I have not a legal question, but maybe a process question. If council decides to grant first reading, we proceed through public hearing, and then we decide that we're not satisfied with the flow in the area, does the council have the ability to pass the project through to second and third, and then use the building permit to be able to decide whether we're satisfied with the circulation, because it doesn't change the use or density of the site at that point? Therefore, is that something that the council can actually make a decision on at that? I mean, I get that council wants to retain the hammer and rezoning is the hammer, but is there an opportunity for public hearing, or is it not legitimate for us to withhold a building permit on those grounds?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I just wanted to say, yeah, all those consultant reports and staff analysis could be made available before public hearing, definitely. If this application, the OCP amendment and rezoning proceed to public hearing and second, third reading, and then final adoption, the next stage is development permit application. And so you're correct that the density, height, and the setback provision could not be changed at that stage, but the design can still change.
Could we ask that staff get that information and host a meeting with the local neighbors to talk about that study in order for staff to be able to, and possibly council could attend that as well prior to the public hearing if we've got 5 weeks?
Mr. Miller?
Your worship, if that's council's direction, we could certainly facilitate such a meeting.
I don't want to be confusing the public information night with the, at that point, announced public hearing night, but I'm never afraid of us getting more information out of there. I think that's positive, so.
And could I just ask another question? When was that study done? The Bunt study?
Yan Zhang, do you have that date?
Yeah, the original study was done in 2017. I do believe there are any updated study that was done 2 years later, 2019.
So it's still over 3 years old and the circulation has changed dramatically. So that information needs to be updated in order for relevant information on traffic and impact for council consideration of these bylaws should be part of this, the information brought to hearing. So how can we update that information?
Can I just be clear? We have the applicant in the room. Can we get clarity? Is 2019 the most recent transportation study that you have available to you? At this point, thank you very much.
So 3 or 4 years old.
But a transportation plan is not a requirement for the council.
No, I understand, but we're asking, we're at hearing right now, more information, that's, you know, is important. And certainly the traffic on Brookridge has changed dramatically.
Thank you very much.
So how do you want me to ask for that?
You are welcome to put forward a referral motion at this time if you would like to. I'd really love to be able to give council an opportunity to speak before referral motion is heard.
I'll wait.
So I'm happy to go through the speakers list and come back to you for a referral motion. But ultimately, it'll be the will of the room if we want to refer the matter away, or if we feel we have enough information to make the decision on first at this point.
But we could refer it to a hearing, but also between now and the hearing, have some sort of consultation process and do a little bit of updating on the numbers. We could put a counter down on Brookridge, for instance.
We normally mandate by council a public information meeting. I don't know what Mr. Milburn.
A neighborhood meeting.
Your worship, staff can facilitate if that's the will of council tonight. Take your direction on that. In terms of information related to traffic impacts, every traffic study includes a projected growth attached to it. And staff can certainly review the studies completed to date and provide, our transportation engineers can provide confirmation to council whether or not the growth rates anticipated in the existing studies are consistent with what we've seen in the pattern in the community. As council knows, staff do regular traffic counts and analysis and have a fairly good sense of the kinds of traffic concerns. And so we could certainly provide that kind of commentary in advance of the public hearing as well.
No, we don't formally have an opportunity for a friendly amendment, but I guess my question to the mover was it doesn't materially change the proposal. You would still go to first at the same, you would still pass first tonight and you would still go to the public hearing at the same time. Are you amenable to adding direction in there that the staff engage with a community meeting in between? Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Okay, so then it's up to Councillor Murray. Would you like to make a referral?
I thought you wanted to go through the.
There's
Oh.
Sorry. Oh, Catherine, sorry, Councillor Pope, you raised your hand, Councillor Pope. Sorry, folks, there's no further public input at this point. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm confident that thank you, with this development, the applicant has addressed most of the residents' concerns and in particular the traffic safety and flow. Mr. Parker had concerns about the parking and so many non-residents already taking up so many parking spaces. And I was just wondering from staff if it would be possible for resident-only parking in that cul-de-sac dead-end street. Is that an option?
Mr. Milburn?
Your worship, the parking and traffic bylaw gives council the authority to establish resident-only parking areas. Of course, they're done in a larger consultation process specific to the neighborhood and they're raising their concerns. They typically therefore aren't triggered by specific application. Staff at this point don't recommend that is necessary for this particular proposal, given that they are providing sufficient off-street parking in their proposal, 2 spaces per unit, which is significant and appropriate. However, at council's direction again, a analysis can be completed by our transportation staff who do consider requests of that kind on a relatively routine basis as they come in from neighbors who raise concerns about resident only parking.
My question was really sort of outside of this project in a way. What we're hearing is that there's no parking there. And I'm not quite clear on your answer if you're saying we could do that, like quite apart from what we're doing, just to help mitigate some of the residents' concerns.
If I may first,
The answer is yes.
So whether the project goes ahead or not, we should be reviewing the transportation on the street. I think that's a fair point. And I think that the concerns being brought forward are that it's unacceptable today, whether the project goes ahead or not. And so we can be reviewing transportation options in either case.
So how do we make that happen?
We don't need a motion for that. I think we need just acknowledgement from staff. I see nodding heads that they're going to look at transportation options for that space. It doesn't have to be direction from council.
All right, great.
So I'm returning back to the speakers list.
I'm not quite finished.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Also, I understand that on Ridgewood Street, the transit there only has a drop-off. It's not a pickup. And I'm wondering if why we're asking the applicant to do a covered, sheltered bus stop there when it's not actually a transit drop-off pickup zone. When around the corner in front of the church, it's hugely busy with people coming and going at all times. And that's where it's really needed to have a shelter. And I understand the applicant would be willing to move it over there.
You have a comment from staff on the matter?
Through your worship, I believe this is actually part of the enhanced public transit service for the area. But I am actually not an expert on that, and I'm happy to have the question answered and then report back to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
There's a comment.
Yes, your worship, we could certainly look at the location of the bus stop, given the plans for the area. So that would just be something normally we could do, and I appreciate the suggestion. So.
And if at the end of the day around the corner makes the most sense, we can just apply some assistance there. That's fine. Okay, your comments are complete. Thank you. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thank you, your worship. Just to sort of reiterate what you said along the lines of the fact that there clearly are some traffic and circulation issues currently happening in this area around Brookridge related to largely the United Church. And I would certainly be more than willing to, for staff to take a look at this and what improvements can be made. But I'm not interested in amending the motion to use that as a way to delay first reading.
Thank you very much. I don't think the intent was to delay first reading, but I think it was to, yeah, but that's fair. Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you, Worship. when I first, I mean, I've always been a proponent of hearing from the public and affordable housing and rental and supportive. But I have to say, years ago, I lived on Ridgewood. So I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. And when I read this proposal, it complies with the Edgemont Village Plan. It complies with the OCP. It has 0.8 square footage, which is low. We usually have quite a bit higher. It does tear down to the houses when it gets to the 2 level. It does tear down, which is something that we had been asking in the last council. So it's not affordable as the previous council, and I think this council means by affordable, but it's affordable for the Edgemont area. So the idea that we can take a privately owned plot of land and start dictating when they're in compliance with an awful lot of things that we've asked for. So having said that, though, I am upset about the process notification. This was similar to 29th when there was consultation with the neighborhood, but it was years before. And I was a newbie counselor, and I thought that meant recently, but I didn't ask. So, and this is not the only site that we, as Councillor Murray said, this is not the only site that we are getting complaints on. That notification just isn't happening. So I'm really concerned about the process, and I'd be interested in Councillor Murray's motion, what her motion might say. But in general, this complies with everything that we sort of asked for. So if we could get a community meeting in before to get more discussion and thought, that's what I would really like, but go forward with the public meeting as scheduled. Or hearing as scheduled.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Just my comment on the matter. I mean, I don't think this is an out of line development size for the space, and it's not at the densities that we're seeing in the other town centers and village centers. But I've had a challenge with the Edgemont plan, and there's no surprise to the people that were working on that. They put a tremendous amount of work in, and I've definitely talked to them about the challenges that I've had with the Edgemont plan. One specifically, just generally, very, very high level speaking, my general view is that your official community plan should be extremely flexible for your community. It should be forward looking, it should be open, it should allow for quite a bit of flexibility within the space. And then you should come in with a local area plan that's much more moderated and modest. This does some important things for you. It assists the development community with land assembly because the local area plan doesn't push it up to those higher levels. It doesn't have a commitment to those higher levels of density. And therefore, the assembly costs tend to be lower for people to put it together. And the space and room that creates for the municipality is then we have the flexibility to density bonus to some degree to look after community amenities and acquire community and public benefits by going over and above from the local area plan, which is modest, the OCP, which is flexible, and you can negotiate. Not every project is going to be built to the OCP. Not every project is going to be down at that local. You're going to get a mix of stuff throughout the space. And the problem we had here was that the local area plan actually came in more dense than the official community plan. And so then the net result is every single project that comes forward in this zone has to ask for the more complicated official community planning process. And it also means that their land assembly costs are going to be so high that it'll be extremely hard for us to be able to effectively demand public benefits back in order to be able to proceed with those projects. So I think, unfortunately, the current state we have right now within that area, with the local area plan being more dense than the official community plan, is it's not on the right side to promote and support public benefits through the development process. it makes it very hard for us. And so I'm dissatisfied with where we're at. The crafters of the local area plan are all well aware of my concerns and my arguments on this matter. But I don't ultimately find this project generally out of line with the character of the community and with the general village goals that we have in the community. And so on this as a case by case or one-off at this point, I'm satisfied that this should be referred to, this should be granted first reading and should be referred to a public input opportunity for us to hear from the community on their thoughts and potentially, even if they're dissatisfied with the current project, some ideas on what they would do to tweak the project. But I'll be supportive of the motion that's on the floor at this time. I'm the last speaker at this point that I've seen. Councillor Murray, I did tell you I would provide you an opportunity to make a referral motion. Is that your intent? After hearing that, I think 5, 6 members of the council have said they'd be willing to grant first reading.
Yeah, we can grant first reading, but I just want to see if there's a willingness to look at some sort of neighborhood meeting between now and the public hearing to be able to accommodate input.
So then your proposal is not a referral,
No.
it is to amend the motion on the floor.
And add
a clause for that. Just checking with the clerk. Thank you.
Deal with the motion on the floor, and then Councilor Murray can propose a motion around things so that we keep the two separate, just so that it flows.
But then I need to know that we're going to do that meeting prior to voting on the hearing. That's why.
Okay, so we'll do it as an amendment. Then at this point, I'm satisfied that that doesn't violate our policies and procedures. So you're moving an amendment to the main motion, which is that
staff host a neighborhood meeting with Brookridge neighbors at our earliest convenience prior to the public hearing. Implement a traffic counter on Brookridge to determine vehicle circulation, and that staff bring forward options from that meeting to form part of the information at the public hearing.
Okay, is that in order?
Yes. And if I get a
Is there
seconder
on that motion?
Thank you,
Seconded
Councillor
by Councillor
Hanson. And I would
Your
like to.
Comments just specifically on the amendment, please.
Yeah, so the reason that I'm bringing this forward is because unfortunately the motion that was passed in November of 2022, which was passed by this council, the motion stated that a request for 30 kilometers per hour from the Edgemont Village Business Associate, or that staff work with the Edgemont and Upper Capilano Community Association and the Edgemont Village Business Association to look at managing vehicular traffic to create safer, slower atmosphere to benefit all in the Edgemont community. And that was passed, and nothing from engineering has come forward in that regard. So unfortunately now we're here at this place where we're getting comments from our local neighborhood, and we're not able to provide any information in regards to vehicular access, circulation, speed, safety issues. And now we're having to deal with it as part of a development application. So I'm fine to go to public hearing, but I just think we need that extra step to be able to consult with Brookridge residents. And I hope council feels that more information is a benefit, not a deterrent.
Councillor Murray, Councillor Hanson, you were the seconder on the amendment. Do you have additional comments specific to the amendment?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker I have is Councillor Pope.
Am I speaking to now?
Specifically the amendment on whether to add a public information or a town, like a community meeting before it goes to the public hearing. Doesn't contemplate changing the date of the public hearing.
What I don't get is.
Are you on the microphone? There we go.
Sorry, what I don't get is, isn't that what a public hearing is for? To hear what people have to say, and then we make our decision based on what people say at the public hearing. What part of that doesn't work for you? I don't get it.
If I may, so at a public hearing, it is question and answer. And at a community meeting, you could make it so that there's questions about transportation. We can respond and we can provide additional information. That's something we're not supposed to do under the provincial legislation for the hearing itself. So it makes it a little more free-flowing with questions and answer and responses, particularly about the issue of potential alternatives to the circulation.
And would this in any way, because I think it's absolutely important for people in the neighborhood to be heard, and I didn't realize there was that distinction, so thank you for the clarification. But would this in any way delay the public hearing?
It's not contemplated
okay.
to need to do that. But I would like to clarify, it's a fair point. I don't want to get out of this meeting and find out that this isn't practically responsible with a November 28th date for public hearing. So just clear, you think that this is entirely achievable within this time frame and will not alter the November 28th public hearing date?
I've consulted with staff, and although we don't have all the particular details, location and so on tonight to announce, it could practically be done by providing notice to neighbors, scheduling location, providing commentary and receiving feedback and summarizing that feedback for council. It should be sufficient time. It will be tight, but it should be sufficient time. Staff could facilitate it if that is the direction of council tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Miltner. It should not affect the timing of the hearing. Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, the only caveat to that would be, it's one thing to have a neighborhood meeting. It's another thing to try to do the kind of studies we want around traffic counts and all the rest of it. So I just don't want to be dismissive of the fact that if we have to do those traffic counts and get that information in order to have a neighborhood meeting, you could see the public hearing having to be deferred in order to meet the conditions of the amendment. So I just want to be very clear about that.
We're not officially fixing the date of the public hearing at this point, but it sounds like there is goodwill and the ability to achieve those dates, and that satisfies me.
Okay.
I think Councillor Pope, you still have the floor. Is that right?
Okay, so does that mean?
Microphone, please.
God. Sorry. Does that mean then that or could we possibly move forward with the neighborhood meeting without necessarily having the traffic data in place?
Provide that
Right.
at the
Sorry,
public
Councillor,
hearing.
I want that clear. I want to know that staff is confident in that. So, Mr. Milburn?
Your worship, and I'm not entirely clear exactly what Councillor is asking for in terms of the response on the traffic analysis. If the request is for the complete response from our engineering department to council's former motion in advance of the public hearing, I couldn't guarantee that that would be available at that time.
I think we're just trying to look for base data that reflects the current situation rather than base data that fed into the 2017 and 2019 report.
Little.
And as mentioned previously, staff can confirm whether or not the assumptions used in the existing studies are consistent with the pattern we're seeing in the neighborhood based on our experience as the transportation and planning department.
And possibly Mayor Little, just laying down a traffic counter in the neighborhood might be sufficient.
Okay, thank
you.
Okay, I think the next speaker I have is Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. So
If I may remind you, because I know there's been lots of going on.
Pardon me?
I'm looking for specifically comments on the amendment, if possible.
Right, thank you for the clarification. Despite this not delaying first reading, I won't be supporting the amendment. I'm not sure that we're going to learn anything outside from another public meeting then information that we don't already have. I see it as adding delay. I see it as creating a lot of work for staff on an application that was first received in 2017. There have been plenty of opportunities over the course of that time for the public to weigh in, for the public to learn more, for residents to speak with the applicant. Granted, it has been a long time, but we do have a public hearing, and that's to Councillor Pope's point, that's what public hearings are for, to hear from the public. So at this point in time, I'm not supportive of the amendment. I think it is adding an extra step that really is not going to result in any information that's going to change the direction. So I won't be supporting that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes on the amendment, please.
I was just wondering, we were talking about, besides the traffic flow, we were talking about possible alternatives of relocation of the entrance to the parkade. Is that something that staff could address for the public information meeting, before the public hearing?
Yes, but it would also be appropriate. It doesn't change the use or density of the site. It would also be appropriate before a building permit, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Milburn.
That's correct, Your Worship. Staff can provide information on the analysis undertaken to look at the options and why the recommended location is the preferred from a public safety perspective.
Thank you. That's what I'd like.
Thank you very much. I see no further speakers. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with councillors back and opposed. So the item is now amended. So returning to the now amended item, is there any further discussion from council? Okay. Oh, Councillor Murray.
Well, I just have to pipe up one more time that this information was requested nearly a year ago through a motion that was passed unanimously by this council. And we have been given no update as to if that work is proceeding. And I would like an update from engineering about that motion that was passed in November in regards to circulation in the Edgemont Village area, traffic safety. And that would, I'd like engineering to report back on that through Mr. Stewart or Mr. Cohen.
I've got lots of planning people here, and I've got finance.
It's unfortunate
but,
there's no engineers
Mr.
here tonight
Milburn,
and 5 planners.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, quite simply, Your Worship, will follow up with engineering. That's a much broader issue than this specific 12-unit development at the end of the day. But certainly we can get an update and provide that to council.
It would also be good to get that update based now that the 30-kilometer-an-hour pilot is in, what that does. Do people take alternative routes now? And we have more traffic on Colwood or other places in the village.
And that was the very issue that was raised at that particular time. So
thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. Okay, I see no further speakers. Just to be clear, so we don't amend motions very frequently. And so I just wanted to be clear. So now the mover of record will now be the people that move the amendment. Is that correct?
Through your worship, no, now we just vote on the item. The mover and the seconder remain the same. The amendment is now slotted in at the end of the current motion.
Even though they're not supportive necessarily, but well, no, it's something we don't do frequently. I was kind of curious that if they weren't no longer supportive of the motion, I think it would be a misrepresentation to end up with them being the movers of the motion because it'd be hard for them to address it. I digress. I'll get out of civics and we'll carry on. On the motion as amended, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. All right. And I know we only have a 5-item agenda, but we've got to pick up the pace a little bit, council. That was a long time for a 12-unit discussion. And we've got to pick up the pace a smidge. So at this point, we're moving on to item 8.2. This is bylaw 8525, proposed changes to secondary suite regulations. And at this point where this matter is returning from public hearing for council's consideration, second, third, are there any comments? I think we go straight to debate. Okay, we're going to go straight to debate. Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Hanson, you'll be moving a recommendation?
I will.
Okay, is there a seconder on the matter? Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ma. Discussion, Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm pleased to support this proposed bylaw change, which will allow larger secondary suites and that will occupy a larger percentage of a home's floor area. And I'd like to thank obviously everyone who's been involved in bringing the matter to this point. Currently, a secondary suite may not exceed 90 square meters, approximately 950 square feet, or 40% of the home's floor area. The proposed amendment allows suites of 130 square meters, 1,400 square feet, or 49% of the floor area. At the public hearing, the point was made that without amendments to the rules regarding maximum allowable square foot ratio, the proposed amendments will do little to enable increased housing stock in the district. I have, since my election in 2014, consistently supported policies that would enable secondary suites. In my view, the rental of secondary suites provides much needed rental housing without the need for large development and construction projects and all of their impacts on our community. We can take advantage of existing housing to house people that need affordable housing in our community. I don't see, from my point of view, why there's any limitation on the percentage of floor area that is targeted for a secondary suite. If a person wanted to live in 20% of their house and rent out 80% of their house, I don't see how that would jeopardize our community or be negative. As far as changes to the square foot ratio that were so discussed in the public hearing, that will have to await another process, and I make no comment on it at this time. For the moment, very pleased to support these, what I consider to be relatively modest changes to our secondary suite bylaws.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Secondary was Councillor Ma. Your comments?
If I may, I'd like to ask a question on protocol first. The person that seconds, my understanding is you don't necessarily have to agree with the motion, or am I incorrect on that?
That's correct. You're supporting the continuation of the conversation. You're not obligated to, but if a mover changes their vote, that's problematic.
Okay, so I'm just following up on my colleague's comment about FSR. I think myself and I think many of my council colleagues see coach houses as being part of the gentle densification, and it could help address the housing crisis. However, I'm not convinced that the bylaw.
This is not about.
Sorry, secondary
I
suites.
want to be clear about that. So we do have another item that I know has a lot of crossovers. It is still in closure, and that is the issue of coach houses until we have that discussion. And the other one obviously is we have another public hearing that's in closure right at the moment too. Name escapes me at the moment. There you go, Airbnb. Sure. Okay.
Short-term rental.
So Councillor Ma, back to the item under consideration.
No, I stand corrected. I do see secondary suites as a way to do gentle densification. So I will support it.
Thank you very much. Just my own comment on the matter. When the regulations changed, I thought it was a sensible change to make it more flexible. I agree with Councillor Hanson that I don't think we need to be prescriptive on the size so much. Although I think that I don't think there's any restriction on the owner of the property being the occupant of the secondary suite. So arguably, the only part that we've actually limited here is between 40 and 60%. So you couldn't split the house 50-50, but the owner could occupy the secondary suite at only 40% of the house. And so it's not, but I would have been willing to go up to 50%. Because then you can do anything in there. You can partition the house however you so choose at that point. But obviously this is an improvement over what we currently have. So I'm going to be supporting this, but it's a living document. Who knows what will happen in future. But next speaker I have is, I believe, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Well, I'm just going to go back to the process again, because I don't think I've been to a hearing in a long time where it acted more like a public meeting. You answered more questions at that public hearing than I've seen in years, if ever I've seen that. In fact, I was going to actually call you out of order at one point because I don't know if you are strict with us to say this is not a conversation back and forth. And I know you were trying to just assist, but it tells me that the consultation process is not working. It's not working. And council has over the years, well, certainly since COVID was kind of on the down swoop, said we want to go back to those public meetings and in a town hall where we are there, where there's poster boards up and staff and we can walk around, and at times there's a facilitator to talk about these issues, because you get so much more out of it from the community, and the community, that's an opportunity for them to ask questions. And you know, it's a great opportunity to meet people and to, you know, get a sort of more fulsome picture. But there were so many questions at that hearing about what people couldn't do, what they could do, why we were doing it this way, sort of the one size fits all approach, how it was going to impact people. And I just, I'm concerned that we need to go back and look at that, because I don't think and I think the same thing on the coach houses. There were so many questions on coach houses as well. And a lot of people were saying that because the FSR didn't change, that it wasn't going to help them in any way. So I think it's the process of going out there and allowing something to be ripped apart and not be afraid of hearing the information from all sorts of different perspectives instead of trying to control that narrative through surveys or us asking questions to people and getting information back. And I much prefer going back to the old days of how we used to do it because I think it was a lot more effective. So yeah, I mean, usually public hearings are in favor, unless it's something really big. And this seemed, both the coach houses and the secondary suites just said, this is not really going to change anything. So I just think we need to let staff with new perspectives be free to explore that kind of consultation and that kind of discussion in the community and then see what we get back rather than this survey approach that we've taken over the last few years, because I don't think it's been, you know, as helpful as it could be. And I think it's one tool that we've used, but I think there's so many more that we could have implemented and got a whole bunch of different ideas to bring forward. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. And I had some similar concerns and actually went to the clerk after and said, is it okay that I'm doing this in this? And well, the clerk said he would step in if he thought I wasn't at least being factual. And so it's difficult because obviously we want all of our public meetings to be satisfying for the community. They come out and they want to, they take time out of their schedule to come and give their feedback on a particular issue, and they want to have an opportunity to do so. And I fully support that. And there I was receiving question after question after question. And I think one element of it is it's a very complex issue. Not this one so much as the other one under consideration, but the other piece was, I think that there was too long a distance between some of the public input and the actual decision making. The pop-up for it was 1.5 years before. And for something that is actually quite a simple change, I think that was a really long time, and we may have been better served if we had done the pop-up a month before, something that is not that complex. But here we are. We heard the public feedback, so
I think we need a workshop. Risk of upsetting a certain councillor. I think we need a workshop to discuss public consultation because it's a bit broken.
Councillor Pope, your comments.
Thank you very much. I'm very much in favor of some of these changes, but not all of them. I feel it's beneficial to increase the size of the secondary suite. However, I do agree with Councillor Hanson that I don't think there should be any limitations on it. I think that we need to think about what the goal is. If the goal is to encourage more people to have secondary suites, which I think is the goal, then why are we adding more restrictions? And I note some of them. If you go to page 163, bylaw 8525, I don't understand why we're putting more restrictions on secondary suites, including the exterior entrance of the secondary suite must be incidental and subordinate to and must not.
We abandoned that.
That's what I thought, but here it is in the bylaw. So I don't understand. And we also abandoned not allowing a secondary suite where there was a coach house on the site, and yet here it is in here as well. Can you explain that to me, Mr. Milburn?
Mr. Milburn?
Your worship, may look to the clerk to confirm, but the amendments that council agreed to are reflected in the bylaw that council is considering tonight. So I think there was a specific reference to a bylaw controlling the entrance. So that was an amendment that council agreed to previously, and that would be the consideration tonight. I can look to the clerk to confirm that.
Yes, thank you. I'm just reviewing the bylaw, but there was the amendment that was captured. So I will just review the bylaw to ensure that it is correct. There is also the previous version as an attachment to this report as well. So I'm just confirming that.
Yeah, so the only package I have that I was given is with the attachment 3, bylaw 8525.
It's 163.
163.
So this would be attachment 1 is the updated bylaw. So if you look in the attachment 1 to the report,
What page is that?
151.
page 151, yes.
Those are the notes as to what transpired.
Yeah, and
What?
It says here, we passed a resolution to remove references in the bylaw to minimum and exterior entrance requirements.
Right.
The old motion is an attached extra document, but it's been revised through motion into attachment 1.
Have that.
In your,
One you don't have?
apologies, through your
No, I
worship.
don't. Page 151 for me is secondary suites.
Yes, sorry, I will provide correction to that. So through your worship, the attachment 1 begins on page 127 of the full agenda package.
Oh, the sub document was also called attachment 1.
Okay, fair enough. Is there?
It's hiding. Why is it there?
So it is a bit confusing that there were more than one attachment 1s and that there were more than one versions of bylaw 8525. But the one under consideration tonight is the one that starts on 127, which I believe we did amend and did not include the, what I think I called at the time, the duplex provision or something like that. I see, yes.
Okay, good. Because I was wondering if it was a mistake or whatever, and I'm
No,
not quite sure how it got by me in my package when I was reviewing everything. But anyway, thank you very much for that clarification.
No, thank you for pointing it out. That would have been confusing. So thank you.
So I'm also wondering, does that now also include this, the provision for you can't have more than one boarder or lodger and have a secondary suite? Is that changed too? I just want to make sure these things I noted are.
Can I have clarification from staff? My understanding is we cut it down to really the size of the secondary suite is the only thing up for consideration today.
Okay.
Mr. Milburn, just on the
Which line?
microphone, please. Thank you very much. Yeah, we cut it way down. That was the only thing we could get consensus on.
Sorry, Councillor Back is pointing out to me that it's still in there.
Page 130. Does mention
Size of secondary suites.
just add it.
It's probably above that. Well, here it is. It's
above 502.4 under a single family residential building being more than one boarder lodger may not have a secondary suite.
right. So the problem I have with that is, somebody wants 2 foreign students in their house, and then they also want to rent out their basement suite. What's wrong with that? Why are we adding an extra, requirement? Can we delete that?
Clarification on that, because I thought this was under the deleted section.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
No, we cut it down to just the size of the unit. And so just above that, you're seeing at the bottom of page 129, deleting section 501 and replacing it with. And so now it actually says, that's it. I want to be clear about that. Is that part of the consideration?
Your worship, perhaps Mr. Milburn may be able to clarify that, but if council's not clear, we should just defer dealing with this and come back with a much simpler document that very clearly spells out the changes that are being proposed, because I think what's happened here is that, yes, this is a very complex issue, and we have a lot of nuances that went through in the discussion. And if council's not clear, then I don't suggest that we move it forward. I suggest that we get a much simpler document in front of council that says this exactly is what we're proposing to change, period, and not get into appendixes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is.
I want to be clear that I don't want to throw away a public hearing unnecessarily. So I want to be clear with the clerk then. If we refer this matter back to staff for potentially providing alternatives to it, we would then go back through a public hearing process?
Your
Because this
worship,
isn't a
I-
rezoning. This is
Yeah.
just our own bylaw.
Yeah, your worship, I'm just suggesting that you refer it back so that staff can clarify what is in front of council.
I'm not
going-
satisfied with it the way it is in this, so I'm going to be moving referral back to staff, seconded by Councillor Murray.
Timeline on that, just to add?
That's
Like,
fair.
it-
Mr. Milburn, when could you potentially have that up for consideration? I'm recalling it the same way Councillor Hanson is, that we cut it down to just secondary suite size after frustration. We couldn't reach consensus.
Your worship, this could be returned November 6th with the clarifying, it's not new information, it's simply just clarifying or pointing council specifically to the amendments that they had directed us to approve and showing
well, to
how it's
be-
reflected in the bylaws in front of council. That would be November 6th.
Fair, Mr. Milburn, I think it's the verbiage in the actual bylaw that we have concern with, not a description, a supporting document or description. And so
Document clarifying exactly what council agreed to and how it's reflected in the bylaws before council for consideration.
okay. Okay. That's, I'm supportive of referring to staff. I just want to be clear about that, though, that it's very likely to result in us changing the wording of the bylaw itself. It's not just simply that the council made a decision to refer the matter and what direction we gave. I get we may have may not have constituted the wording in the motion to reflect the will of the council at the moment. And so it's not just simply to verify that you got the changes correct. It's to make sure that the bylaw we pass reflects the will of the room. And so so it may not just be about our how we amended it in the past. Just want to be clear about that.
Your worship, staff will take their best attempt at expressing exactly council's motion in a report and pointing out how those motions are reflected in the bylaw before council for consideration.
And I will just say, and I don't want to disparage the process in any way, shape, or form. We're waiting for details from the provincial government about that, what they're going to require, and this may be moot. So.
And new information.
At this point, I'm going to call the question on referral back to staff. I know we have people who have expressed an interest to speak to it. I think we've had the discussion. We've already said we're going to have it. If you have a procedural question or something.
Yes, just procedural. I had a couple of people that contacted me in the last week and asked, why don't we show what the old was and what the new is? Because all it says is that we're going to replace it. And that leaves it up to the public to go digging and find to whatever, so.
We used to
why
in the
can't we
reports
do
show
that?
what was being deleted.
Yeah.
And I think that would be helpful in highlighting exactly what the material changes on this.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
Sorry, can I just add to that? It's very inconsistent process, Mr. Stewart. It happens sometimes and it doesn't happen the other times. And we've requested that over the years, like fees and charges, amendments, bylaws such as this, things are highlighted in red. It just seems to sort of hit and miss us, whether it happens or not. And I just don't understand, like we finally, after 20 years, we're getting this. So that's good. We're getting the slides, but we really need to also look back at what was and what is the change. Yeah, I know. I'm
Confusions
just,
tonight was what was actually included as an attachment in it, but it does require you then to be reading back to the old document to see what's changed and trying to figure out if you can note the material changes.
I think the complexity of the reports are a challenge as well. And all of the Councillor McKay years ago added additional reports, background reports to all of the reports that come forward. And we may need to review that, but just maybe look at high level information. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion how we can make this simpler for council and simpler for the community to understand. There's no question that council has added over the years a desire for more information. The more information you have in front of you, and when you're trying to make a decision, it can make it very confusing as to what it is that's in front of you. So we'll have a discussion with staff on that.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the motion, and this is to refer the item back to staff. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you very much. And to the public, I'm sorry for the confusion on that.
6th return.
The intent is to return it on November 6th. Yes, thank you. Okay, on to item 8.3. This is also a matter returning from public hearing. It's up for consideration for second and third reading at this time. Is this board from before? Councillor Forbes, did you have a motion or is that from the last item? Okay. Councillor Hanson, do you have a motion on the matter? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Recommendation's been moved. Is there a seconder on that? Okay, no second, no, seconded by Councillor Back. Okay, Councillor Motion, your comment, Councillor Motion. Councillor Hanson, your comments on the motion. How about that?
All right, thank you very much, Your Worship. And again, I'd like to thank everyone involved. I'm pleased to support the proposed bylaw amendments with respect to coach houses. And I'd like to thank everyone involved bringing the process to this point. The bylaw changes will permit coach houses and secondary suites on the same lot, 2-story coach houses, and a streamlined approval process as regards to issues such as siting, setbacks, coach house room sizes, parking, and pedestrian access. As with the proposed changes to secondary suites, which were just recently deferred, at the public hearing, we heard the view that the proposed coach house changes will have little impact in terms of increasing the supply of housing without increasing the overall allowable square foot ratio. However, as I mentioned in reference to secondary suites, that debate will need to await another day. Focusing on coach houses, I've been involved in the development of coach house policy since I was elected in 2014. To commence with, all coach houses had to come before council for a bylaw variance. Participated in loosening the policy regarding coach houses. I support these changes. I would support, for the record, further streamlining of coach house approval process to minimize the circumstances under which the applicant must appear before council to seek a variance. With that said, I am happy to support what, again, I consider to be these relatively modest changes to the coach house policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the seconder on the matter was Councillor Back. Your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I seconded the motion for discussion. I think I've been a supporter of coach houses all along, and I think we have not gone far enough when we've made updates to our coach house program, and I still don't think we're going far enough with the proposed program improvements here. I do want to thank staff for the work that's gone into getting us to this point, but we did hear at the public hearing fairly unanimously that there was support for changes for enabling and promoting more uptake of coach houses, but that the proposal doesn't go far enough. And the FSR floor space ratio issue seemed to be the dominant one at the public hearing. So recognizing that the changes coming from the province could override this potentially, or force us to take a look at the FSR ratio issue maybe in the near future. I would certainly support that. I think, you know, if we really want to see more coach houses across our community, then we're going to have to take a look at that. Also, it was pointed out in the public hearing how the variance process, which is how we've seen, which we've pretty well supported every variance that's come to council, is actually quite a time-consuming and costly process to put applicants through. So having the 2-story coach houses now part of the program, I think makes a lot of sense. But I think we want to avoid people coming forward, having to come forward with a variance if possible. So I am generally supportive of the direction. I'm just not sure that it really goes far enough.
Okay, thank you very much. Just my comments. I'm not supportive of this. For different reasons. I don't know that we should be increasing the FSR in single family areas where we're not actually reaching the critical mass for infrastructure, where we're able to build it around transportation infrastructure specifically. That's why we plan town centers. And I don't know that, this bylaw affects a property at the very top of St. Mary's and down in Deep Cove, largely the same as it does in the middle of our community. And so I don't think I can be supportive of that. I do recognize that there is a tremendous amount of cost associated with Coach House, but overwhelmingly it's not our process. It is the cost per square footage to build, which was coming in at about $650 by some of the accounts that were raised to us. And so I will never see coach houses as a significant source of housing in our community when you compare to what you can achieve in a town center with planned development. We approved 1,600 units last year. We only had a handful of coach houses, and you can say, well, it's because of our process that we don't allow enough properties. But even if 100% of the properties were allowed to have coach houses, it still wouldn't mean that someone could afford the $600,000 to build one. It's from an environmental perspective, it's less efficient than multifamily. From a delivering utilities perspective, it's less efficient than multifamily. From a cost perspective, a per door cost perspective, and for an actual rentable space, it's less effective and efficient than multifamily development. And so I'm not prepared to give tacit upfront approval for second floors on secondary suites. And I also think that we shouldn't be adjusting the FSR for this purpose. If I had 2 minutes, I do think that the community does deserve a discussion about FSR. It's been a very long time since we had that discussion in single family, but I think that we need to tie it into discussions about the exemptions that we currently address. So right now, a basement property, not necessarily a suite, it can just be a basement, is exempt on a property, which is us using our policy to incentivize people to effectively to produce basements. Which we know have environmental impacts, have hydrological impacts in the community, but it's largely because we're giving them the exemption. And so I do think that in the longer run, we should have a discussion about altering the FSR, but it should be tied to removing the exemption from basement suites so that we're compensating people with some more above ground massing, but we're getting rid of the incentive. If someone still wants to produce a basement suite, they can produce a basement suite. But that's a bit of far afield from today's discussion, so I'll return to the matter at hand. I've heard the arguments. I've heard what the public said. I hear the dissatisfaction that this is again one of those issues that it's hard to get everybody around a consensus on, and I'm not supportive of us moving these particular decisions over to our staff. I think they still need to be made with public input, and that's in part our job. So I will not be supportive of this motion. The next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. First of all, the signs that were erected through the community in regards to coach house and secondary suites and residential zones, the title of the signs were development proposal. It was not indicated that it was a public hearing, so the signs were incorrect. And the proposal was updates to definitions, requirements, and coach house roof heights, which I challenged with a number of staff members. And the day before the hearing, there was a revised wording to include second story roof height. So again, our level of communication to the public and the clarity of the signage is still, it continues to be a challenge and a problem. And Mr. Stewart, I hope that you're going to be looking into this and doing a full review into why a public hearing sign read development proposal, because I think I did have a right to say that it was miscommunication to the public. And I'd like to get the clerk's opinion at a later date as well, because it did not indicate clearly a public hearing or a development proposal, which was it? So that's something that I think we have to look into. But I concur that second stories, and I do concur with your comments, Mayor Little, that coach houses from the very beginning, there's not been a plethora of applications in regards to coach houses. I think we've had two builders in the community suggest that they were anywhere from $650,000 to $750,000 for builds that were relatively modest, 1,200 square foot coach houses. Not with a bunch of bells and whistles, but coming in at that number, it's not what it was intended
Sorry?
It was not what it was intended to do, which was to create some level of affordable housing. It just didn't do that. It's now housing considered for maybe family housing, multi-generational housing on a lot. But I don't think the process is cumbersome. If you're going to pay costs like that to be able to build something like a coach house, I still, the district is not a grid. We don't have a plethora of lanes in the municipality. Most of our single family homes back onto other people's yards. I've had 2 houses that backed onto 5 people's yards because of the way that they were cut. And many of the houses in the municipality look like that. There were comments from people in Upper Lonsdale where the siting of the coach house could be very impactful to some of the residents, and the impact would be challenged as well as the parking issue. So, and we're still waiting for engineering to bring forward. We had that coach house that was just off Keith Road, I think on Cloverly, and we were asking them to decommission their front driveway. And because we were adding a coach house in the back, and council gave direction to bring that forward to omit that, because why wouldn't we be supportive of more parking on people's lots? And I still haven't heard anything about that either. So that would be something that we could ask staff to refer back to. But I think second stories should actually still come back to council for consideration, because when we first started coach houses years ago, we had a number of applications that were going to have significant impact on single family neighbors' privacies, sitting right on the back fence line. And it was going to cause, a real intrusion to the neighbors. And I think, we need to be able to respond to that and find ways around it, not necessarily defeat it, but find ways about it. And I think if it's just a blanket bylaw, then staff, has the control to be able to approve it. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the public.
Thank you. I see no further. So, Councillor Pope, second time speaker.
Thank you. I am very much in favor of seeing more coach houses built in the district. Sure, it's not going to solve the housing affordability problem, but it's definitely going to enhance many, many people's lives, keep families together. There's so many reasons that people want to build coach houses on their properties. And I'm just cannot believe that since 2014, we've only enabled 37 coach houses to be built.
Oh, sorry. No crosstalk, please. Sorry, Councillor Pope, go ahead.
Only 37 coach houses have been built since 2014. So I think the reason for that came at the public hearing when we heard a number of people say that it's just too onerous of a process, that the process is still so complex and lengthy and expensive. And that's why we end up with so many homeowners here at public hearings complaining about the fact that, they've had to, it's cost them $600,000 to build a coach house. And it doesn't need to be this way. It needs to be streamlined. And I'm in favor of any type of streamlining that we can provide. But I don't think this is going to cut it. And the other thing that I heard from the public hearing from just about everybody that spoke, not everybody, but many of the people who spoke said that they were in favor of the coach house program. But the problem, and this bylaw change, but the problem was the FSR. If we don't change the FSR, then this is all going to be for naught, because when you add a coach house into the maximum density allowed by zoning, it's just going to exceed it on most occasions. So that means that we're now passing a bylaw, even if we're in favor of more coach houses, that actually isn't going to lead to more coach houses being built. And I have a real problem with that. I don't understand why we're not figuring this out. And is there any way that that this bylaw at this stage could be amended? Can I do anything like that in terms of referring it back to staff to include the FSR change? Or am I going to have to reject it all, the entire thing because it's
So FSR is a measure of density, therefore we can't change use or density except properly through the full rezoning process. So at this point, I think that would be out of order. Now, what you could do is a follow-up motion to start the discussion about amending FSRs, but I think it would be separate from this motion.
Yeah. I don't know. Does this group want to have a discussion about amended FSRs? I don't, do we? Okay.
Let's continue on the discussion about what's come back from public hearing and is on the floor for second and third reading first.
Yeah, so I'm just not sure I can support this because to me, it's like, if we don't amend the FSR, when we're amending the proposed coach house program improvements, then we're not going to end up with more coach houses. And therefore, to me, it's like baby steps to nowhere. So those are my comments on it, and I would like to have a further discussion on the FSR.
Councillor Ma, your comments on the motion?
You know, I'm gonna echo a lot of things that Councillor Pope says. She says usually more eloquent than I do, but I'll try. You know, what I heard from the feedback from the public hearings and some previous discussions with residents that tried to get a coach house built in the district in Pemberton Heights, but ran into challenges. I'm not convinced that this proposed bylaw, as it currently stands, will help the district achieve its goal of, you know, more density, more gentle density. I don't think it will achieve it unless we make some reasonable adjustment to FSR. Now, I also heard Mayor Mike talk that FSR is a bit more complex, and following advice from the CAO before not to make policy on the fly. I won't support this motion, but there is another option, option 3, to refer this back to staff. So if the first motion fails, you know, I would consider making a new motion to send it to staff with some direction. I'll probably need your help on wording how to look at FSR again, but yeah.
I think to achieve what you're talking about, I don't know that referral is the right. I think the motion on the floor is not about FSR. And so we should make our decision about the motion on the floor and then have a separate discussion about FSR, which may help. But this is specifically addressing the places, the properties that already qualify for a space and making it more flexible for them to produce different configurations. It's not about extra buildable floor area. And so we can complete this discussion, I think, whether we increase the FSR or not. This will still affect properties in the community because there are bungalows that are nowhere near their buildable space, and they would benefit theoretically from changes. But I don't think that you hold back the one for an entirely different discussion about an entirely different area. I get that there was discussion in the community about it. People clearly wanted to talk about the FSR piece, but I don't think it's contingent on whether you would support or be opposed to what's currently on the floor. So if I may, go ahead.
Yeah, this would the unintended consequence of that be, if we send a message that we're going to look at FSR, if I was thinking about a coach house, I'm going to wait and hopefully get some more FSR or more space. So then it doesn't achieve our goal of encouraging people to build coach houses. So it's kind of like we're kind of caught in this loop.
this is what has come through. It was passed by council at first reading. It was referred to a public hearing. The comments from the community were about the content of this. Now our decision is about that,
Right.
just this content.
But I'm also remembering words of our mayor that says, you know, we need to have an open mind and be amenable to persuasion. So I'm persuaded to consider another route.
But at this point, are you going to be voting for the motion tonight or against the motion tonight?
See, this is the challenge.
can put
We want to
forward-
support it, but
Yeah.
but it's not the desired result that we want.
Then you can vote against it and
Yeah.
come forward with
Okay.
a follow-up motion at another time. Is that Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I have to be really honest. You know, the council is still divided on this issue.
Yeah.
There are some that feel that this is a good first step forward. There are a number that said it doesn't go far enough, and there are a number that says it goes too far. That's not a recipe for success. I would just defeat this and say we got to go back to the drawing board. And if the discussion has to include FSR, then let's have that discussion. But right now, I don't see that there's enough consensus on council to move this item forward. And I'd rather see it defeated. I'm just being blunt. It's up to you to decide how to do it, but I'm being pretty honest about that.
Yeah, and I think we have heard comments from 4 councillors saying that they're not supportive of the motion in its current form. And so it probably is best to test the motion and then have a follow-up discussion on the issue. That includes the issue of FSR, and I hope it also includes the question about exemptions for basements. I hope the council is willing to talk about that. But at this point, Councillor Ma, I am seeking your comments on the motion on the floor. If your comments are done, that's satisfactory too.
My comments are done, and I will not support the motion as it currently stands.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
Mayor Little, I think you raise a really important point about the concept of the OCP and what it was meant to achieve with town centers. And when we considered infill housing up in Upper Capilano, the engineering department raised concerns about the densification of single-family neighborhoods and what that would do to the efficiency of our utilities. And certainly the question has been raised in regards to the densification of single-family neighbors that the province is pushing, and how that is going to impact the needs of the utility across the region. We have been planning for densification of communities for many years through Metro 2050, through our own local community plans, next to transit networks, and not going into single-family areas. And because basically what it is increasing density amongst neighborhoods that were planned through sprawl. And sprawl is expensive, and sprawl costs money to service. And that's why density in communities with the appropriate infrastructure is what the plan was about. Unfortunately, the appropriate infrastructure we do not have. We keep falling further and further and further behind with that infrastructure. And you can look at municipalities throughout the region that are failing behind, and not only bridges like we are, but schools, for instance. Surrey is deficient in so many schools because they've got such a dense municipality. So this discussion about density and FSR, how we are moving forward to be able to achieve something we think we're going to get. I would push back and say that the reason that most people don't build coach houses on their property is because if you had hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a coach house, I hear we're talking about affordability continually, and spending over $500,000 plus upwards of $1 million on a coach house is, for the vast majority of residents in the district, is unattainable. Certainly there are those that can't afford it. But there's the vast majority. So we're putting all of our energy in something that is going to impact very few.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, a second time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to speak and try to persuade my council colleagues to support these relatively modest changes as a step forward. There are people who want to have coach houses and secondary suites on the same lot. There are people who want to have a 2-story coach house without having to come here and pursue a variance. I would encourage us to pass this through. It is a step, in my view, in the right direction based on our experience with coach houses in the district, and then move on. And I'm going to be an enthusiastic participant in the SFR discussion. But I don't consider it to be productive to just defer all of this to a further day when these are tangible steps in the right direction for many who live in the district. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson, Councillor Back, follow up your second.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Hanson, for your comments, because I don't want to get in the way of something that I believe is progressing in the right direction. And I'm just wondering how quickly we can come back. Your Worship, you suggested a possible amendment would be to look at the FSR issue as a separate amendment. So I'd be interested to see.
Not as an amendment. I think it would be in collision with what we had as a discussion with at the public hearing. So it wouldn't be as an amendment, it would be as a follow-up to have a follow-up discussion about it. But it wouldn't be an amendment.
In collision when it's in direct response to what we heard at the public hearing.
There was no information at first reading. We did not pass a discussion about that change in use or density. It was a question, yeah, but we did not pass at first reading a motion that contemplated that change in use or density. It would be inappropriate to change it at second and third. I'll double check with the clerk, but that is clearly a change in use or density, and we don't normally have that kind of flexibility to amend that on the fly. This is provincial regulations.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. A change to use or density would require moving to an additional public hearing to hear from the public again, and then return for second and third reading.
We'd actually have to return back to first reading.
First reading, apologies.
Then pass a new first reading, refer it to a public hearing. So pass or deny the current discussion, and I think you're hearing goodwill around the room to have the discussion about FSR anyway.
In which case, I am inclined to support the motion because I want to keep it moving ahead, but I'd also like to have that discussion about FSR and potential changes there in a fairly timely way. Okay. Councillor Ma, have you spoken 2 times? Okay, second time speaker.
Sorry, just a question on process. This is actually quite interesting.
Procedural rules here tonight.
So there's always a positive side. You know, being open or amenable to persuasion. You know, I hear my colleagues say this is good, but not quite what we want, but is it good enough? I also share Councillor Back's concern about making sure that we get to this. Would it be appropriate to amend the current bylaw to state that, you know, we would look at FSR as part of it, or is that tying it together? No?
I'm happy to do a follow-up motion if that gives council comfort that we will have the discussion, but amending it at this point.
Okay, so we can have a follow-up motion. Okay. Good enough.
I think staff prefer that we want to have that discussion.
I know, I just want it on the books.
Okay. So I'm prepared to call the question on the motion that's on the floor. I see a hand from staff. You have a concern?
Just a brief point of clarification. There's 2 bylaws that are being considered. The one is with regards to you know, the development and how you delegate decision making. But then there's a separate bylaw with regards to considering coach houses and suites on the same lot.
The only thing is that I didn't hear that as being the tipping point of supporters and not supporters. But I mean, that's up to the council. If you want me to bifurcate the motion and approve and have separate consideration for the 2 separate aspects, I'm willing to do that at a request from a member of council.
You can bifurcate them if it was clear. You know what 8144 is. This is one of the challenges that it's not easily
I don't think there's debate on bifurcation. So would you like it bifurcated?
Sure, but clarify where that change is on. So it's the first one. 1424 is the role that staff will play in the decision making, and then 8144, or that's the procedure bylaw. So 8144. Who knows?
I'm going to go to the clerk for direction on that. It seems as though we're separating this. If Councillor Murray's comments are fair, then it seems that we'd be breaking this into three portions. The first one being the first clause, which is referring to bylaw 1424, or sorry, actually officially, sorry, bylaw 8615. The next one, 8635, and then the last two items together. Does that meet your needs to the clerk and then also Councillor Marion?
So the last one is the second story, right?
Development procedures, can we clarify that? That's
Yeah.
8639, and therefore that's reference to the second story.
4-4. Concerns me
It is
that-
the second, you're correct, bylaw 8639. It's the one that's in brackets. That's actually the one that's got the action in it. And so, so bylaw 8639, which is the last two clauses there, that's referring to coach house height.
So the one where you can have a secondary suite and a coach house on the same property.
That would be the, let's say
That would be 8615.
8615.
Just about this, in the previous motion, we were talking about if we could have a boarder and lodger at the same time as having a secondary suite. Now we're at the same place where we're talking about a coach house and a secondary suite, and we're confused. And the clerk's looking and staff are looking, and I think this is really something that we need to look into a little bit more, because this is so, forget it. I'm just, this whole thing has been very disappointing.
Do you want it bifurcated?
I'll just,
Okay.
I think it should be,
I have to get a request from a member of council to bifurcate. If nobody in council wants to bifurcate it, we'll carry it forward in the motion as the way it was moved and seconded.
I think it should be.
I'm prepared to call a question on that. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with councillors Forbes, Murray, and Little opposed.
You just, oh.
You can, yes, although, Mr. Stewart, I think you've heard the intent.
Yeah, I mean, if council wants a matter of the record, asking staff to report back on some options with respect to FSR related to the issues under consideration by council, fine. We understand that that's what you want to do. We understand that's probably necessary in order to move this whole issue forward. But if council wants to pass that motion, fine, that's direction. I'll be very honest, it'll be Q1 at the first of next year, but we certainly can do the work.
Okay, is that your motion, Councillor Ma? No, I think that staff can address that. I think the intent is understood. And is that acknowledgement? Are you seconding that, Councillor Back? Okay. And discussion on that motion? Councillor Forbes, your comments?
You had mentioned that if we did go back and talk about FSR, you might want to talk about the basement suite, basement exemption as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is my view on the matter. I think we have to address this issue of basement suites. Right now, we're incentivizing something that is not actually generally a good thing for our community. And I think that if somebody really wants to build a basement suite, they should be able to do it, or a basement space, they should be able to do it. But I don't think we should be incentivizing it. I think, and so the discussion about change in FSR, I think, should be connected to, you know, getting rid of the incentive for building, digging down on properties by giving more massing above ground, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah, I would just counsel to be careful about trying to put too many ingredients in the soup. I understand the desire to look at some of these issues, but FSR is one thing. And there are other things that council has raised in the past about setbacks and yard coverage and basement suites. And so I think we need to formulate a plan as to how we're going to get and actually move some of these issues forward. But we're really clear that you want, at the very least right now, you want to hone in on FSR, and there might be other issues that arise as a result of that.
Yep. Councillor Murray?
Well, I was just going to say that it's going to open a huge can of worms in regards to FSR. And I think that on certain lots, there's an appropriate way to look at. I think the speakers that were coming forward at the hearing were talking about on certain lots, larger lots, they can, entertain a larger FSR. And so that's what they were questioning. Whereas the myriad of different lot sizes, and we tend at the municipality to apply a one size fits all sort of approach to things. And this is where we get ourselves into, these big debates where there's a split in the community, because we're not looking at how neighborhoods impact, different people. It's not grid. We don't have lanes, generally throughout the municipality. We're on a hill and there's all these different things that impact. So it's a very large discussion that we have to, it's not a quick discussion. It's going to be a long discussion, like the zoning bylaw, for instance. The mayor talks about, giving more massing on the main floor. But are we talking about subterranean suites, for instance? Are we lifting those suites above, underground, so you have to look up to see the sky? Or are we, are we looking at, the impact of not including the square footage in a basement? Under our zoning bylaw. I mean, that's another huge issue. And how does this impact the natural flora and fauna of neighborhoods, which we've already seen has been impacted negatively because we don't count basements, square footage. So there's a whole bunch of things that come out of this. And I think it's going to be a very in-depth discussion with a lot of impacts that may seem simple today and very complex when you begin discussing it.
So your worship, the motion on the floor is to ask staff to report back on the options with respect to changing FSR. Otherwise, we could go on all night contemplating all the things that we could discuss, and we won't be able to move that forward. So I would love us just to deal with that issue that's on the floor if we can.
I understand your concern that we'll again get too many options, that it will cause us, you'll get the 2, 2, 1, 1, and 1 issue again. I just, I have no interest in changing FSR unless you get rid of this issue. I just want to be clear about that up front. Councillor Forbes, you spoke. I think Councillor Murray, you spoke. So I believe it's Councillor back next. Oh, you spoke before Councillor Murray. No, I'm just talking about the ones you were before. I'll come back to you. That's fine. But Councillor back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to say, I think we're trying to cover too many issues, and I'm not sure if we agree on the intent, Councillor Ma, but I think it's around the FSR and coach house policy primarily. So I'd like to see it come back and just be about looking at FSR as it relates to coach houses. So my intent was not to look at all of those other issues, which I don't think is going to give us any clarity on this.
So to be clear, then you're talking about exempting coach houses from the FSR?
Yeah, I guess it'd be the same, whether it's exempting or increasing allowable FSR, same for coach houses.
You'd have to do it with an exemption for coach houses, right? Because if you just increase the FSR, then the person doesn't have to build it as a coach house to get that extra FSR. And one of the things that came up in the public hearing, which I found to be a very frustrating comment, was that well, if you're not going to give me extra FSR, then I can only build my 4,500 square foot house, and you're forcing me to put the renters in the basement. And I found that to be very distasteful, actually, that 4,500 square foot, and we're forcing you to put the renters in the basement. I think that was very uncomfortable for me. That was really what they thought we were doing. You have 4,500 of buildable space. You can certainly build a suite above ground in that case, but I digress. You were making your point about it being tied to coach house. I think that the discussion then is whether coach house is exempted from square foot in some calculation that would be the way to achieve, I think, what you're talking about. But I think staff have enough information to come back on it at this time. So is there any other comment on asking staff to start that discussion? Councillor Forbes.
I just wanted to say the same thing that you say. I think the FSR is tied to whether we're allowing an exemption or not. Because if we increase the FSR and we still allow the exemption, we could be overbuilding a lot. And I don't mean overbuilding too much. I mean overbuilding on that lot. So I think they're inextricably tied together. Now, whether that requires 2 conversations before they come back, then that's what we need to have, is 2 conversations on each of them before we actually come back with the bylaw. And oh, now I just forgot, there's something else I was going to say. I've forgotten it.
So we're very clear as staff. You want us to come back and talk about FSR as it relates to coach houses, because the purpose is to increase coach houses. And the question is are restrictions around FSR hindering us from moving forward? Some of you have attached other conditions, fine, but that's what we're going to report back on as a discussion with council. That's the motion. Yeah.
Okay, no, I think we should start, the first place to start is a general workshop on altering FSR in single family neighborhoods and start to see if we can get consensus to form around it. Because saying now we're going to turn on secondary suites and we're going to turn on or off coach houses or others, I think we just need to get off of line from the regular meeting of council and start to have a more open discussion about that. And I just, looking for your endorsement of starting that conversation. Councillor Pope. Microphone, please.
Thank you. It's not that complicated. FSR is not that complicated. We can get this done at another council meeting and move the whole thing forward and encourage builders to get on with building their coach houses. We can, but I don't like this talk of, having more discussion about it in a workshop and this and that, because, oh my God, it's going to take at least 6 months to a year to get back to us. And that was not my intention when I first raised the issue of having a later discussion of FSR. So I want to know that when we're asking staff to report back, which I believe is sort of the motion or the intent coming out of here, that it's going to go to staff and come back to a council meeting. And that is the place to have our discussion about exemptions or whatever else, but it will be limited to FSR, not secondary suites, this, that, unless it's in some ways peripherally attached to the discussion or germane to the discussion.
Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Worship. Happy to take council's direction. I would just raise to council's attention what is on page 176 of the council agenda, a recommendation from staff that staff anticipate there will be new information coming from the province of British Columbia this fall. That new information will be proposed regulations that will allow 3 to 4 units on every single family home in urban areas in the province. Staff anticipate that there will be a need for staff to provide recommendations and advice to council with respect to FSR, as well as other matters related to mass and form of structures on single family lots. So this is a broad and complex conversation, but there is new information that staff anticipate coming out from the province this fall that will help us provide some guidance. Unfortunately, we don't have that information today, but we anticipated this fall based on the public the announcements of the province to date. So we'd be happy to provide input and feedback on FSR.
I need to be clear about where we're at procedurally. Right now, we have a motion that is on the floor, although it sounds like there's been discussion to alter the motion, but the motion that's currently on the floor, moved by Councillor Ma, is that we have this discussion specifically about coach houses and FSR. I believe that is the intent, seconded by Councillor Back. That's what's currently on the floor. If there's no further speakers on specifically that issue, we can proceed with that. Alternatively, we could table the discussion until after we hear back from the province about the regulations. But frankly, we could do either of those things, and we don't lock the date in. We could wait until the council report. They said this fall they're going to be coming back with those amendments. I don't have a tighter time than that.
Yeah, is it going to include FSR for sure? Do we know that?
We don't.
We don't. So when you say we'll come back for a discussion, what do you mean exactly? Do you mean a workshop, or do you mean a council meeting where we actually
I believe that
take
staff
action?
are going to bring back a report. It'll be to them to recommend whether it goes to a workshop or to a council meeting.
So my recommendation would be that it come to a council meeting and not a workshop.
But it may have multiple different options, and it may be.
Great. So if everybody reads the report a
Well,
week
that's
in
up to the
advance
mover and
of
the seconder.
council, then we'll all
Mover and seconder
understand
is-
it.
Sorry, Councillor Pope, I can't have you speaking over right now. Mover and seconder, that right now, as it stands, it's being referred back to staff. Staff will prepare a report. The report will come back with at the appropriate time, depending on the nature of the discussion that's recommended from the staff report. Okay, I'm prepared to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries with Councillors Forbes, Murray, and Little opposed. Okay. Right, Council, we normally take a stretch break at 9 o'clock, and I think we should do that. I don't want to shortchange the time for the corporate plan or the accessibility plan. I think it would be best to take 2 or 3 minutes at this point and give people an opportunity to get up, stretch their legs, have a bio break, and then we'll resume the meeting in about 3 minutes. All right, returning back to the regular meeting agenda. Again, we're now moving on to item 8.4. This is the 2023 to 2026 draft accessibility plan, and we have some introductory comments from Sarah Walker, and then to our consultant, Ms. Walker.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. The report in front of you this evening with respect to the district's draft accessibility plan for 2023 to 2026 represents a significant milestone in the district's journey to improve accessibility for all individuals and reflects our commitment to creating an inclusive and welcoming environment where everyone can participate. By way of background, the Government of BC passed the Accessible BC Act in 2021 and required that public sector bodies create an accessibility plan by September 2023. In order to be in compliance with the Act, the report recommends that Council approve the draft accessibility plan and that Council direct staff to develop an implementation strategy to operationalize the plan, and that Council direct staff to update the plan within 3 years to align with the future requirements of the Act. The plan was developed with the support of consulting firm Urban Matters in consultation with the North Shore Advisory Committee for Disability Issues, or also known as ACDI. And Sarah, who is here from Urban Matters, Sarah Mantufo, has patiently been waiting. So with your permission, I will turn it over to her to provide some brief context as well as a presentation on the plan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for allowing me to speak today. I first want to acknowledge the team that supported this project with Urban Matters, as well as the district staff and ACDI who supported us greatly in the creation of this plan. Accessibility is a cornerstone of thriving and inclusive communities. This work is ongoing, it is iterative, and it requires continuous adaptation. Therefore, this draft plan commits to the goal of embedding accessibility in all district practices over time. As mentioned, the Accessible BC Act came into force in 2021 as a way for the province and public serving organizations to make BC more accessible through actively identifying and removing barriers. The District of North Vancouver and its partners in this project, the North Vancouver District Public Library and the North Vancouver Recreation and Culture Commission, work together on this shared draft plan. While each entity serves different needs of district residents, collaborating on the plan promoted a continuous approach to accessibility and facilitates learning across departments and organizations. With the creation of the draft plan, the continued collaboration with the North Shore Accessibility Committee on Disability Issues, and the established feedback mechanisms, the district is now in full compliance with the Act. Engagement was a priority to this process and conducted throughout the draft development. We also completed a document review of existing literature, policies, and programs pertaining to accessibility within the district and the North Shore. We then created a framework for the plan, key themes and goals for action, which were reviewed by the ACDI and district staff. Our emphasis on engagement was to ensure that the draft plan aligns with both the work that the district and ACDI are already doing, and that the voices of people with lived and living experience were amplified throughout to guide the framework of the plan. We had 4 meetings with the ACDI throughout the process to ensure our work was compliant with their feedback, discussing existing gaps, resource sharing, plan elements and framework, key themes, and priorities for action. Cross-departmental workshops were hosted with staff from the district, NVRC, and NBDPL to discuss current and planned accessibility actions in their divisions, gaps and barriers, and challenges to implementation. We also had working meetings with appointed staff liaisons from across the departments to go over the draft plan to ensure that the language was consistent with district documentation and that the final plan would be usable by staff moving forward. The Accessible BC Act identifies a set of guiding principles for improving accessibility that should be considered in the creation of accessibility plans. Based on our conversations with the ACDI, a 7th principle of inclusion was added, expanding on the existing definition of diversity. These guiding principles were then used to inspire each of the action items in the plan. As well, early on in the process, we ensured that definitions of accessibility, disability, and ableism were understood between all stakeholder groups to create a shared understanding for the development of this draft. The ACDI supported our team in also defining the types of barriers that all people, particularly people with visible and invisible disabilities, face to ensure that actions presented would address all needs. This accessibility plan draft outlines how the district, NVDPL, and NBRC intend to improve accessibility for people with disabilities within the District of North Vancouver. This plan covers the next 3 years and is intended to be updated every 3 years at minimum, acting as a living document to reflect progress, evolving community need, a growing understanding of accessibility, and future resources such as the pending release of provincial accessibility standards. To comply with the Accessible BC Act requirements, the district has also established 3 options for feedback mechanisms from the public that residents of the district can use, including by phone, email, and in person. The plan includes a learn, plan, ask, act, report, repeat approach to ensure that accessibility and inclusion is at the core of everything in the district. This approach towards accessibility creates room for continued learning and is designed to help make ongoing changes across the organization toward better access for everyone. The actions taken in this 3-year period of the draft are intended to build a strong foundation of knowledge and skills for continuous improvements to accessibility. This plan is guided by the phrase, "nothing about us without us," a phrase coined by disability activists and used in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Accessibility work must be done in collaboration with people with disabilities, ensuring empowerment in decision-making. The aim of this plan is to embed accessibility in all district practices. As accessibility is an ongoing process that must respond to changes over time, the draft accessibility plan right now does not reflect a set of actions to achieve full accessibility within the 3 years it covers. Rather, it prepares the district to have the skills, the knowledge, and resources to incorporate accessibility in all aspects of their work, to be continuously identifying and removing barriers, and to increase awareness to help prevent barriers from arising. Part of the intention of using this approach is to ensure that learning is at the foundation of accessibility action. By increasing and supporting continual staff learning, there is also continued buy-in and action taken on projects. This will lead to changes in municipal policies and practice, which then results in changes to external organizations that interact with the district. As staff become more knowledgeable, more can act as champions to help educate and act as allies in creating safe spaces for people with disabilities in supporting accessibility practices across the district and interaction with external organizations. After council reviews this plan, the intention is then that district staff will support the creation of an implementation plan to ensure district ownership of the recommendations. In addition, we hope to support a public awareness campaign to share the work that the district is doing and allow residents of the municipality to understand this plan, the definitions, and guiding principles to help create a more inclusive and less ableist municipality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, I'm happy to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Murray. Just my own comments on this. I mean, the district has been a leader in this area, I definitely think it's something we should be very proud of. It was in 1990 that Marilyn Baker, one of the former mayors of the District of North Vancouver, started setting up the Advisory Committee on Disabilities Issues across the North Shore, and it was completed in 1991, and West Van was added in 1992 under Don Bell. And so this community has a long legacy of putting accessible decision-making in front of our staff to make sure that the decisions we're making contemplate impacts on accessibility. Accessibility for us is, it's important for everyone. Obviously, there's going to be varying degrees of accessibility, but we want to make our community as barrier-free as we possibly can so that all people in our community can enjoy all of the benefits of our infrastructure. And we also, within ACDI, go another step further, which is to making sure that the housing stock that we're building has a very high level of accessibility within it too, so that people have lots of options. I think that it's important to recognize that there are people of every economic stratosphere within the accessibility community, and it just seems that the recommendations always come back that it's got to be, you know, the ground floor unit or some other such thing, and the reality is there's you can have really amazing accessibility options in largely any built form if you're intentional about it. So it's something we've been committed to. I'm happy to have served on our advisory committee issue for 8 of the last 20 years I've been involved in local politics, or 14, sorry, well, over an 18-year span. And it's something that's, I believe, very important to our community. So I'm happy to support this, and I think it's heading us in the right direction. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. And thank you for your presentation. Do we have any sort of big moves that we're going to be making over the next few years? Some low-hanging fruit that we can improve in regards to our accessibility?
I think it's maybe best to put that to staff.
Yeah,
Ms. Walker, I mean, obviously this is not without specific actions and motions, but what's the intent?
What's our plan?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through your worship, the plan, this particular plan right now is the framework and the foundation for moving towards the implementation action plan. That is actually already underway. We've been working with different divisions and departments to start finding ways to incorporate some of these principles into things like our built form, our design. Really where we're going to start is with the education piece that Sarah commented on, and we'll be doing some public awareness on accessibility, some of the language that we should all be learning as well. We are looking at training for staff. That's actually where we're going to put our efforts in the new year, and then we'll be sharing the implementation plan with council as step 2. Thank you.
I guess I'm always interested more in the actions and how we can improve things. Like when I look at this room, for instance, you know, over the years, we've had many people with hearing impairments, and our technology is not always the best. It doesn't always work. It's not always tested. So we'll have people come in and request that equipment, and they're not hearing any better than if they were just sitting in the room without the electronic or the technology. I'm looking at the chairs, for instance, and I recall Diana Bellhouse, who in the last years of her life, a local resident, very political, would come and visit us, but she had a walker. And without somebody coming in to help push one of the chairs down for her to sit down, you know, it was hard for her to do it on her own. So it's those little tiny things that I think we still could improve on, and those action items that we could, you know, quickly move on rather than waiting for recommendations to come forward. You know, I think about my grandma, and I watched the seniors at the Parkway cross over to Parkgate, and the walk signal, although it's been extended, for some it's just not long enough, and you start counting down, right? So let's just make it a little bit longer. You know, I know when we were doing, and I raised this during the process of Deep Cove, for instance, with pavers. And my father was 92 when he passed, and he lived out at Westbrook Village. And Westbrook Village is pavers all the way along the sidewalk with a cement border. And I will tell you that at 92, going to the bank from the front door of Tapestry where he lived, up the, you know, a few shops up, he would actually hug the wall on the cement because the friction from the pavers made it hard for him to walk. And it was easier for him to walk on the cement than it was on the pavers. Now in Deep Cove, we've got one huge road filled with pavers. So it's all of those kinds of things. And I think, you know, working with the people that are actually being impacted by this kind of thing and asking them what those simple changes are, that we have to do a little bit better job at. I think sometimes we feel like we we know everything from a planning perspective or an engineering perspective. And I think the best people are the ones that are actually living it. So I think we, as you know, Mayor Little, you've been on that committee for a long time. You've been a very vocal advocate on that committee. And I know we're going to be looking at some terms of reference, I think, and about being able to solicit people for that committee that maybe are advocates for people with disabilities versus people with disabilities. That's been a challenge over the years with filling those committees across the North Shore. Although we have those kinds of challenges with all of our committees, getting volunteers to be a part of it. So, you know, there's always more work to be done, but I just want us to look at those little simple wins as well that are a little bit quicker and not wait for recommendations to come back, that they're implemented as quickly as the idea comes up, so we can make it maybe a little bit easier for people that are just entering this building and wanting to sit down. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Thank you for your Thank you for your presentation. It was very good. I said that 3 times. It was really, really good. I think this is a really important topic, and I think some people think of disabilities as something you can see. Disabilities aren't always something that you can see. So I think this is really important. And what I was going to say kind of tags into what Councillor Beery said, in the sense that it says that the financial department will work with this, but we're on a 2-year, 3-year framework, but a 2-year to implementation. Do I understand that right? What was the 2-year mark that you mentioned?
The implementation plan would be happening as we speak, or post the approval of this plan.
Yeah.
This plan itself is for until 2026. So it's a 3-year plan.
Okay. So I guess I just want to ask, it's kind of, it might be too early for you to, you know, I'm not looking for anything definite. I'm looking for the 30,000 foot level. What do you think that the district taking this on, because it's going to require staffing, resources, time, research, a lot of that, and that costs money. And so I'm just wondering, do you think this is something that we will be able to fund until 2026 or longer possibly? I'm referring that to.
Fund, sorry?
Well, we have to build it into our budget, right?
Yeah, I think you'd have to consider the individual action items and what you'd figure out what costs those may have, but.
We've already identified the costs associated with doing the training and education. We'll get that done. And then the key, much like the work we did with respect to reconciliation that is continuing to happen, you just start to engage staff in trying to find ways to implement those concepts. And then what we have to do is budget every year. And some of those don't require funds and some do. So this is certainly, in terms of our first steps, is we need to embrace the notion. The province is requiring us to do that. But as the mayor has said, we've already started that a long time ago. So this isn't something new. But as Councillor Miri has said, the challenge is going to be to get staff really all on board and then say, okay, how are we going to do some steps right now and move the dial on this particular issue. And as I say, with reconciliation, we've done some great things, and I can relate a lot of those which are under the radar, the council, but they've been very meaningful with our First Nations partners.
Well, I thought it was probably too early, but I just wanted to make sure that we're definitely including and looking at this as we move forward, because it is going to require resources going forward. And I agree with Councillor Muri that if there's any low-hanging fruit that we can get on and do, and it's not, it's not requiring that we have to add it into the budgets necessarily, I'd really like to cover that way Councillor Muri said. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Councillors Pope and Ma. Councillor Pope, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you very much for your important work on this topic. People with disabilities are the most discriminated against in the workplace, as you're probably aware. And that is why a few years ago, when I was with the BC Human Rights Commission, we launched a public awareness campaign about ableism. And there's just so much work to be done in terms of, so I'm glad to see that the public awareness is a big piece of this. I think that's really important. And just because it's not mentioned here, but Councillor Forbes alluded to it when she said that, you know, there's invisible disabilities. And I think people, so many people in general speak only in terms of physical disabilities when they're talking about the world of disabilities. And of course, we mustn't forget that there are developmentally disabled people. There's mental disabilities and many other types of disabilities that are not concerned with the built environment, but rather in other areas. So those are my brief comments. Of course, I totally support this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Sarah. Like, to me, the goal is a more inclusive community, and I don't see how anyone can reasonably say no to this. So I'm glad you're doing this work. I'm also glad that the district is taking a coordinated approach, coordinating with North Shore Rec and Culture Commission and Library. I wonder if there maybe should be involvement from another partner agency. Is North Shore Emergency Management considered a partner agency, or?
It's yes. Yeah.
Could they be included in this, or would it not be appropriate? I'm just trying to understand why they're not on the list.
In what fashion? I mean, the North Shore Emergency Management obviously has disaster planning and response.
Right, but in terms of making sure that people with disabilities are given the same opportunity with that organization as well.
Yeah, we can easily include them as we move forward. We just need the plan endorsed by council, and then we can look at ways we can apply it to any of our partners for that matter. As has been mentioned, we have also been working with the other two North Shore municipalities because we really want to be able to take a North Shore approach to this as we can. So it's not something that is just district only. It's something that we're trying to work together right across the North Shore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see no further speakers. Was there a motion moved on this one?
Yeah, we just moved it. Yeah.
I moved it. We'll get through. I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor, contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you all for your support and assistance. And thank you for preparing this report that I think was very easily understandable for us. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And corporate plan will take a couple of seconds, right, Dave?
Corporate plan, Dave has about 5 minutes of introductory comments, and we don't want to shortchange the most important document for getting stuff done around here. So, Mr. Stewart.
So, Your Worship, anytime we have a new council and a new term, we strive to identify the priorities. And the challenge is not just to identify the priorities, but it's also to talk about a little bit about how we actually implement them, and balancing the granularity of the plan, meaning how detailed it is, as opposed to getting some consensus around what are the big issues. And certainly council has identified enhancing transportation and mobility, addressing the housing crisis, achieving a balanced and fair economy, leading in climate emergency, fostering community well-being, and I'm just glancing over these to a certain extent, and fostering a resilient organization, because you need an organization to actually do some of this stuff. And we've tried to identify, and we've had lots of discussions with council. We've taken some of the comments in the last meeting that council provided and tried to implement them. But I just want to emphasize, and Council Muri will hold my feet to the fire, this has got to be a living document, because daily, if not weekly, changes are happening around us in both society and particularly with other levels of government. So it's going to have to be continually adjusted, but I will assure our council, and I think you'll be pleased to see that staff have already taken, in particular, the 6 priorities, and we've organized the budget around whether or not those priorities are being actually addressed. And I think you'll be really comfortable when you see that fairly shortly, that in fact, staff have taken those 6 priorities and irrespective of the specifics, we're starting to identify what actions we need to take and what adjustments we need to make in the budget to actually move these issues forward. So with that as an introductory comment, I'll take any questions that council might have. Thank you.
Very much. Council looking for a motion on the matter. I guess, it'd be appropriate for me to move the corporate plan. I think Councillor Murray, I heard your comments second. Yeah, as Mr. Stewart said, and I've done an intro message. This is how we get stuff done. This is how we prioritize resource allocation within the organization to achieve our projects, and I believe it does represent what council's identified as goals in the community. So I'll be supportive of the and endorse the corporate plan. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Well, yeah, yeah, I'll support it. Because, well, I mean, I guess I just want to know if we ever actually achieve what we set out to do. And, over the years, we've had all sorts of plans and all sorts of reports, and some sit on a shelf and gather dust, and other staff, this is a staff document to give direction to staff. And I guess what I want to do at the end of the 4 years is to go back and see how well we did in trying to achieve some of these very lofty goals, like enhance transportation and mobility. That's a very broad statement. Address the housing crisis. How do we do? Achieve a balanced and fair economy. Lead in climate emergency action and environmental management. Foster community well-being, culture, and safety, and foster a resilient organization. All of those are very laudable goals. But at the end of those 4 years, we need to come back and weigh the motions and the decisions that council made against those goals and see if, we are any further ahead. I think sometimes we have these plans and I've used this term before, the best laid plans of mice and men do often go asunder, and I think they do. And it's a challenging time in society right now, and there's lots of impacts. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in a direction. We saw that tonight about how we think we're going to try to achieve a level of affordable housing for a community. And there's all sorts of, reaction to those actions. And there's all sorts of things that we have to address, and it doesn't ever happen it doesn't fully happen in a conversation around this table, or, the various discussions that staff, the community, and council have at different levels. So I think do no harm is something that we've always looked at. Do no harm. We want to make sure that we have a more connected and community that is understanding what we're doing. And I have to say that I feel like our community is more disengaged than ever. I think we had a great engagement when we had a regular newspaper that landed on the front doors of our doorsteps in every neighborhood in the district or across the North Shore. And those local papers were invaluable. And now there's just so many ways to get information. People are, confused about it, or disengaged, or, or just not paying attention. We talked about communication, as part of one of the goals in regards to the corporate plan, and the social media, just, I don't know if it cuts it for some of us anymore. It just doesn't seem to be working. We want face-to-face, but we find virtual a little bit easier and more convenient, but it's not engaging our neighborhoods. It's not engaging our communities. So I think, Mr. Stewart, this is a plan that you need in order to move forward with your staff and have the community move forward. And for that, I'll raise my hand. But I also want to just understand if what this plan states is actually what is happening within the community, because sometimes I don't feel like that. Sometimes I feel like even the OCP, I think the OCP is a document that, we follow when it works for us and not follow when it doesn't work for us. And I have challenges with that. I really do.
In response to that, I can't determine the pace at which council makes decisions, but I can try to set an environment where you have the opportunity to make those decisions. And one of I think one of the most important things is that we integrate into our annual report, which is something that's required again by the province, the progress that we've made every year on these priorities and on some of the action steps. And that's my commitment. That's the direction I've given to staff, that we can't just say, let's do this and maybe identify a few ways we're going to do it or how we're going to do it. We also have to be able to report to the community and to council what progress we've made or not made. And if we haven't made the progress, why haven't we made the progress? So that's my commitment to you, starting with the 2024 annual report. We'll be reporting back on the progress we've made in 2023 on these priorities.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, your comments?
I know that IT is working, and maybe you can't answer this, Mr. Stewart, but IT is working on the dashboard that we asked for in the spring, and we were told we'd have it by the end of this year. I'm just wondering, we were specifically asking then about the housing continuum dashboard, so we could see where we're going, how we're accomplishing. But now that we have definite targets that are mandated by the provincial government, can we not do a dashboard that sort of starts here and gives the target and makes it real simple for people to see how far we're getting to the target? And the other thing is, we asked if we could have that kind of thing, or a housing continuum report quarterly. I think reporting annually isn't good enough. It should either be semi-annually or quarterly.
So quite simply, Your Worship, we have been working in the background. We have a dashboard, and it's an integrated dashboard. And we had this maybe 10 years ago, I would say, where we actually identified what the goals and the priorities were and what the progress, and it's a live document. It's something that's just updated all the time. And it's something that both the community and council can look up. So it's not something that we're going to just be reporting on annually. We're going to be inputting that. And it's something that the community and council can go to and say, what are we doing with housing? What are we doing with climate action? What are we doing with this? What are we doing with that? Because we identified these as priorities. What specific actions have we taken? And so we have developed that dashboard. I can't demonstrate it to you. But it's already here. The staff are using it in the background. But I need to get this approved so that we can say, okay, here, council, you have to take a look at it now and tell us how we can actually improve that.
So does that mean that it's going to have to come to council? We're going to have to talk about it again before we can get those stats out to the public and tell them?
No. I guess what I'm saying is we have it. We have the dashboard now. We've been working with staff identifying on how we would.
I think there's a misunderstanding here. You're talking about decision-making objectives as we go through the priorities. We check off what we've done. You're referring to the housing continuum listing, which is about progress in that specific area of development. I think those are.
And they're not exclusive, because that is one of the indicators that we want to have in this dashboard. So there are a great many others, but we want to be able to have that.
But I think that's the point Councillor Forbes is making. That's not currently public facing.
No, not at this point. But we know that we need to do that. Yeah. So.
Idea of a timeline when it will be able to get out to the public?
Well, a simple answer would be we could do that and get that out to the public standalone from the bigger dashboard, and we should be doing that by the end of the year. So let's aim for by the end of this year for sure, just even on that standalone basis, that information is available to council and the community, with the idea that it's then available on the dashboard on an ongoing basis. So you can just look it up and you can say, how many affordable housing units did we approve? What was our target? Where are we at in that continuum? in terms of our targets, and whether that's social housing or it's rental housing or it's market housing. That's in the dashboard. It's in the
Thank you.
something that the staff, the community can look at.
So before I go to Councillor Back, we're up on the 10:30 deadline, and so we need to put forward a motion to extend the meeting. So I will put that forward. I'll be moving that. Is there a seconder to extend the meeting beyond 10:30? I saw Councillor Back's hand. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. We're extended to 11 o'clock. After 11 o'clock, we need unanimous consent of the council to continue the meeting. Councillor Back.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'll keep my comments brief. I think this plan looks good. I certainly support it. I don't think it looks entirely different from the previous term of council and our plan last term. But I do think, I agree with my colleagues. I think being able to measure our success and see how we're performing in every area is extremely important. We need to know what success looks like so that we can communicate that to the public and they can access that easily. And I think the dashboard has been talked about for a long time. So I hope that we will see that come to life fairly soon. And I think the biggest challenge we need to look at is how we engage the community. When we look at the voter turnout in the last election, I think we need to give the community know what we're doing and give them something to care about. And so I think that's needs to be something that we're always kind of looking at, like how do we reach the close to 80% of people who didn't bother to come and vote. I think it's how we communicate. It's what we the way we get the word out there about different initiatives. But yeah, generally, I think the plan is good. The goals are good, but really it's how we measure our success and communicate that to the community.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes. Okay, right. I will call a question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Seeing the late hour of the evening, unless there's absolutely critically important reports, the only thing I would say in that regard is highly recommend that councillors make themselves available to attend the Council of Councils. It's a critical opportunity to get an update on the actions of Metro Vancouver, and it's a reporting out from all of their different departments, which we don't always get to see. So I would encourage you all to participate in that. Having said that, Mr. Stewart, do you have any reports?
No, Your Worship, there's been a lot of discussion, which I probably will do an information report to council just on discussions that we're having with Metro and how things are progressing, also with respect to the province. So I'll just do an info report on that.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and accepted. Thank you all very much. Thank you to the members of staff who prepared the reports for our consideration. Thank you to the members of the public who provided their comments, and thank you to council for your decision making this evening. Have a great night.
So can we just talk about the parkway?